This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and our personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sander's is 40, mine is 39, and together we have a shared vision for success in our business and our personal lives. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their early years. They often say they wish they had, and given we believe in learning from other people's lessons, we intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. We like to start each one of our podcasts with a brief update on where we're at in our business and personal lives, so when we come back and rewatch these, we know where we're at. But our main topic today is going to be the anatomy of a champion. What makes a winner? How do you become a winner? And are you born a winner? Those are all the topics we're going to get into today. But first, I divert to you for your business update.
My business updates are more digital media items finalized and created. Some social media documents and spreadsheets have also been created. I worked a little bit on those last night. I neglected to send the email last night because I literally didn't click send, but I sent it this afternoon.
I don't mind.
So worked on a couple of those things, as you did as well. I'm sure you'll touch on. Some employee scheduling and managerial documents were in work this week as well. And just some little podcast revelations as well, some ideas we want to implement and stuff like that. So
what ideas did we have this week? What ideas did we have this week?
So
we're gonna change it. Normally we do business update and life update, but now we're doing a business update, life update, and then what did we learn this week? And then the main topic.
Yeah.
But I actually don't have any lessons. I just had business and life this week. So it is pretty short.
Cool.
But my business updates are around the social media master schedule. We're trying to figure out ahead of time, how are we going to structure our social media campaign? Since we have the time to work on it now, we can save money on an advertiser later. We've also been working on information gathering. So what do customers in the space look for? What problems do employees have? What do owners look for in potential management? And then we also have some insider insight. We have several people who are in the community and in that industry who we've been having regular meetings with to get a little bit more inside information before we get going. But those are my business updates. What life updates do you have?
Work has been getting busier, yet today was not a reflection of that, oddly enough. But I still was forced to show up early, so that was scrumptious. But just doing some various documents. I've been struggling with a couple things in the review process, just people who don't do their job well, and then I have to coordinate with those people. So it makes my job harder than it has to be, although it's not really hard to begin with. It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
I did some various car work this weekend. I had a buddy call me Sunday morning, and he was like, I can't get my front wheel bearings off of my M5. And I was like, how long have you been trying? And he's like, since Thursday. And I was like, holy fuck.
Dude,
you've been trying for 3 days? Yeah. So you'd been trying for 3 days. And I was like, I'll come over there. I'll see what I can do. I had him off in 30 minutes.
Nice.
All was good. So I helped him out a little bit, and then I had a car inspection, like a pre-trip inspection. So got a little bit of money from that. Happy about that. And then also chatted up with some people in the community with regards to business stuff, as well as just generally people. I had like more conversations than I expected to this weekend. Just like a lot of random people coming up to me while I was trying to work, which like I enjoyed, but also got frustrated with at times because I was like, I just kind of want to like do my thing.
Yeah.
But it's kind of tough because I want to remain personable, you know, but I also have stuff I have to do. So it's like I'm trying to find that balance. And I feel like I've done it well in the past. It was just this week was like a huge influx of people talking to me for some reason. So like just put my systems to the test, and I think I found some holes in my boat. So I got to patch them up. But
yeah,
you know, otherwise, you know, life has been good. It's been good. It's just rolling forward in the same way, I think, relatively speaking. It's still working on documents, still pushing ahead.
Good.
Still big dreams. So
I have a quote on that later on like still pushing ahead. Like it kind of feels the same as last week, but
gotcha.
Mine, I had a huge revelation with mine this week because I finally got my bike fixed. First, I haven't ridden my road bike in like years. But when we worked on the Camaro the other week, I was like, fuck it, I'll bring the bike with me and try to fix it. Even though it was diagnosed with terminal bike cancer, being the bike doctor, I failed it. So it shifts gears just fine. It breaks just fine. Those are the two main
With
issues.
Eastern medicine, we have healed Mason's bicycle.
I used so much degreaser, but it's all better. And so I met up with one of my buddies from my college rowing team to go bike on Saturday. And we bike this one, like, it's like a 5-mile stretch. And it's actually the road that I used to run when I was in high school. And then we biked it. It was part of our biking routine in college.
Yeah.
So we would go to that bike trail, like just that 5 miles out, 5 miles back, just 10 miles as like a chill Sunday cruise to hang out. Sunday was our off day. We would still go out and like do a light workout together. It was really good for bonding and it kept us in good shape. And so he and I went out and we were planning on meeting up with one of our other rowing buddies next weekend. And we did the bike and our buddy had said, oh yeah, I'm doing it in like 30 minutes now. And so my friend and I did it and it took us like 39 minutes. And I was like, oh, fuck, dude. Like,
We catch him up.
dude, we're so out of shape. We're so bad. I'm like, I mean, we're just going to tell him that we caught the bridge and like that's what kept us up or something. But we
I
got
thought you were going to do it and then try to catch your friend 30 minutes later. I thought your friend was coming.
No. We're meeting up with him next weekend, but he told us I've been doing this route in 30 minutes. It took us 39. But I had woken up on little sleep the day before. And then I was going to wake up early, also on little sleep the day to bike. And I was like, man, because that was the night that all this shit went down and whatever.
Yeah,
I was up until 2, and then I woke up at 5:45 to go on the bike. And I was like, fuck, I'm not excited for this. And it was so strange because when I wake up for work in the morning, my alarm goes off, I'm half conscious, and immediately, without even thinking, I pick up my phone and I move the alarm to a later time, or I snooze it, or I turn it off or something. Like, I don't even think about it. I remember it vaguely, like a dream, because I'm awake for such a short period of time. But when I wake up for work, I just want to not. I just want to go back to sleep.
Yeah.
But this alarm went off at fucking 5:45, and without even thinking, I had my clothes laid out the day before. I wear spandex shorts and a t-shirt, and I had those laid out. But when I got out of bed, I turned my alarm off. I immediately got out of the bed. My feet hit the floor, and autonomously, I picked up my clothes with my right hand, and I opened my drawer to grab sweatpants with my left hand. And as I got into the bathroom, I was like, what the fuck am I wearing sweatpants for? I haven't worn sweatpants in like a year. But that was my daily routine when I rode, because you get up so early from a deep sleep because you're sleep deprived and you need to increase your body temperature to get your functions going. So I would always put on a hoodie. I would put on my workout clothes and a hoodie and sweatpants, and then I wouldn't take them off until I got to practice. So I'd be constantly heating up through the drive. And I did that fully autonomously. And I got to the boathouse and I was like, holy shit, I feel great. And we stretched, we did the bike. And I was like, oh my God, dude, like I feel great. I really want to do this more often and incorporate this into my life. I feel awesome. On the drive home, I was like, I'm going to take the long way home and stack a couple extra miles on my car. Man, my workout's already done for the day. It's only like 8 a.m. This is awesome. You know, I have so much left to do. And so I parked at home. I ate breakfast. I took a cold shower. Life is good. And I was like, why don't I do this every day? And then 9 a.m. hit and I was like, I need a nap. And then I fell asleep until noon. And I was like, fucking, that's why I don't do it. But there was this stretch in college, the spring break days. You would wake up at 5:30 to go train, and you would train until like 10, and then you would sleep from like 11 to 3, and then you would go out and train again until like 7:30, and then you would sleep until you wake up at 5:30 again, and like loop. So for 7 days, when the alarm goes off, you know you're getting up to go to practice, which is such a fucking vile feeling. But it's one that I've missed.
So I had the exact opposite experience with my waking this morning. It was also sleep deprived. I went to bed at like somewhere between 3:30 and 4. And I selected to sleep in my car because I knew I would sleep straight through my alarms to try and get up for work.
But that was for work.
It was for work, and that's probably why I struggled so much. But I woke up in so much pain and so sweaty and so hot in my car because I obviously left it off, you know, and I don't want to roll the windows down because then I just look like I'm drunk. You know, so I roll the windows
Dude,
up.
at that point, why not have a couple?
Well, probably make my day better. But it was like 90 degrees and 5,000% humidity inside the cabin. I woke up and it was all fog, like on the inside. It was like I was fucking myself in there. It was terrible.
Oh my God.
And woke up at 6:45 to the first alarm.
Nice.
Which was great, super convenient. And then I felt terrible for the entire remainder of my day. So
I had what I thought was a hack for getting up for work in the morning, which was I'm going to turn on a song that I like whatever music I'm listening to the night before, my favorite song of the session. That's what I'm going to make my alarm for the next day. So when I wake up, I'm going to wake up with my phone on the other side of the room. I'm listening to the song. And like, by the time I get up to turn the alarm off, I'm kind of singing it. And then I can sing it in my head as I get ready for the day. And that'll make me happy. Right.
Yeah.
And instead I changed my alarm to what I had in high school, which is, get the fuck out of bed, bitch, go. And then it's like dubstep.
Yeah.
And I turned that on max volume before I went to sleep. So that's when I woke up startled at 5:30 in the morning. And I was like, let's fucking go. I'm ready. But it was great. But I'm starting a new effort, which I'm calling Return to Blue. Mm-hmm. Normally when people in industry stray from the path, if the Artemis mission is late or something, right? They call it return to green. Because in your scheduling, it's green, yellow, red. Red means we're way behind and over budget and things are bad. The entirety of the F-35 project. And yellow is like, we can maybe save it. And then green is we're good. And so when projects get super far behind, like Artemis, if it's possible, they push a big effort to try and get back from the red or the yellow to the green. But instead of returning to green, I want to return to blue because those are my high school rowing colors. And those are the colors that I associate with just fucking crushing workouts. So there's 3 factors to it. It's food. So I'm going to start eating better. And as part of that, for Grace's birthday this past weekend, we ate really awesome Italian food. And then we made brownies and ice cream and stuff because that's the last dessert that I'm going to have for at least the rest of the year. So it's like, that was my last cheat meal, my last hurrah. And now it's no donuts, no Tootsie Pops, no mints, no fucking nothing. I'm not having any sweets for the rest of the year. Maybe soda.
I'll do it with you outside the little mints at Pauhana. I can't do it without some of those things.
Maybe those, but like not the sweet mints, like the Werther's Original or whatever. I guess they're not mints, but none of that.
Candy.
Yeah, candy.
Yeah.
No sweets. Sleep is back on the docket too. I'm going to try and get at least 7 hours, 8 where I can, and sleep every night. And then difficulty. I want to every Saturday or Sunday morning, I want to wake up and do one of those bikes because I haven't done that level of difficulty thing in a while. But that's my life update. And the Return to Blue effort is riddled throughout this entire podcast with all of the different topics that I have.
Cool.
Are there any life updates you have before we get into the meat of this?
No, let's get into it. I'm excited.
Okay, so the main part of our podcast is going to be centered around the anatomy of a champion. What makes someone a winner? Think of the greats in each of their respective fields. Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan, Ayrton Senna, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Alex Hormozi. What do they all have in common? They all have a winner's mindset. So I want to open this segment just by talking about what winners are, who they are to us, who our heroes are, what do we like about them specifically, who the fuck are we to talk about this? And I want to start with that last point. I've got a couple Hormozi quotes to start with and then a couple things on myself. But Hormozi's first quote is, hot take. No one cares about marriage advice from single people, money advice from poor people, fitness advice from fat people. And if you aren't richer, fitter, or married longer, maybe you should just shut up and listen instead. And that's why I always stress that we don't have an advice podcast, because I am not richer, fitter, or married longer in every episode except for this one. So the next Hormozi quote is, confidence without evidence is delusion. You don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Give yourself so much goddamn proof that you are the version of yourself you want to be, and you'll become them. So before we start talking about what it takes to become a champion and a winner and etc., I'm going to put myself in the position of someone to give advice by sharing my undeniable stack of evidence. So I'll start with my leadership positions that I've had. I'll start by saying I have been rowing for 10 years. I'm retired now, I guess. I've been retired for like a year. But rowing was my sport of choice when I was younger. And by younger, I mean through all of middle school, high school, and college. So as far as my stack of evidence goes, from 2018 to 2019, I was the Space Coast crew team captain. From 2022 to 2023, I was the Florida Tech varsity rowing team captain. We were then cut from varsity to club status. So from 2022 to 2023, I was the Florida Tech club rowing co-founder and rowing president. And I was also the Florida Tech Student Government Association varsity club and intramurals sports liaison. And then after that, in 2023, I was the Space Coast crew U16, U17 men's coach. I am going to be applying or running for the position of an alumni advisor on my high school rowing team per their request, but I'm going to make them vote me in because I don't want to be set up for a position. I want to be asked to do it. that goes along with my ideology about leaders. But to do so, I want to introduce myself to these people, these parents, with statistics, right? That's the undeniable stack of proof is your numbers. So I've gone through and I've tried to find, I've estimated a couple numbers for hours of experience and such, but I've gone through and I've dug up as many racing records as I can for my rowing profile. I have a lot of wins, but I've also rowed in a lot of races, and I wanted to know exactly what my stats were. And that's what I'm going to share. So this is what I'm going to share with the board, along with some other information about me, but I'm not going to share that here. So the highlights. I've been rowing for 10 years. I have over 8,200 hours of experience. So that's over 8,000 hours of experience. And if you convert that to 9 to 5 hours, so 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's over 4 years straight. So if you were to sit down in a rowing boat and do it for your entire 9 to 5, it would take you over 4 years to reach the hours that I have. Using a stroke efficiency of 65%, which means 65% of the time at practice, I'm actually taking strokes, and an average stroke distance of, an average stroke rate of 20 meters a stroke, which is probably actually a little higher than that. And an average distance per stroke of 10 meters, which is also probably higher than that. So these are conservative numbers. I've taken over 6 million strokes and an efficiency of 10 meters a stroke, which is, again, conservative. I've rowed over 60 million meters. The circumference of the Earth is 40 million meters.
Wow.
So in my time rowing, I've gone 1.5 times around the Earth. So I shared this with my friend who I went biking with, because he's the only other guy who has double-digit years of experience rowing. I was like, together you and I could have gone around the Earth if we took turns 3 times. And he was like, that's fucking crazy. And these are conservative numbers. In feet, for my Americans, that's 200 million feet and 37,000 miles. So now I want to get on to my racing numbers. These are rough because I don't have all of the information. I have probably 85% of the information. What's tough is that the races that I don't have record for are small local races that I know I won because they were shirt races. So I have the shirts to prove that I've won the race, but I won't put it in my records if I don't know what seat I was in or what boat I was racing in or what place I got. Like specifics, I won't put it in there. So these are, again, conservative numbers. But I for sure definitely have raced in at least 51 regattas, and I have raced at least 61 events because you can enter multiple events per regatta. But as far as my statistics goes, I have 28 race wins. I have 9 second places. I have 7 third places and 44 total podiums out of 61 races.
Wow.
So that's a win percentage of 47.31%, a podium percentage of 58.77%, an average number of opponents of 9.6. So per each race, I'm racing against roughly 10 people. And I have an average finishing position of 2.48 with an average gap to first when I don't win of 3.4%. So when I don't win, I'm only 3.4% behind first place. So as far as undeniable stack of proof goes, this is what I've brought with me today. I took a photo the other day, but I didn't send it to you because I wanted to save it for the actual podcast. But wow, these are all my medals. In rowing, we called it clinkage.
That's cool.
These are
a lot of clinkage.
Yeah. So I said I had 28 race wins. This is 28 medals, and I know that I've won more races than that because I've won shirt races.
Right.
So I know that it's actually a minimum of 28, and if you count them, these are 28 of them.
That is cool.
So
that is cool.
So in this podcast, when we speak about a winner's mindset and what it takes to become a champion, I wanted to share that so that I could drive home the point that of any topic to give advice on, this is the topic, right? And I know that you have similar experiences in karting.
Yes.
I'd like to give you a moment to get on a soapbox and share that.
Yeah, I started racing go-karts. Well, I mean, I've really started racing outdoor off-road go-karts around my parents' property when I was 8. So I started that when I was 8, and then I got a dirt bike when I was 9. So that's what, yeah.
So I was listening to an Andrew Huberman podcast the other day, I think. And he started speaking about how the human central nervous system adapts. And he said that the reason you see so many of these sports legends starting so young is because when you learn a skill at like 3 or 4 years old through like 10 years old, your central nervous system is still adapting. So if you're doing these skills that young, your central nervous system actually adapts to be better at those skills, which is why so many famous racing drivers you see have started really young, or famous golfers have started when they were 5, something like that. It's because their body is literally adapted to that. And you can't change that once your central nervous system is adapted.
Interesting.
Yeah, or developed.
Huh. I didn't know that. That was a cool tidbit. Yeah, so I got my off-road go-kart when I was 8, and then I got a dirt bike when I was 9. And I raced both of those around my grandparents' property, just kind of learning like basic skills and stuff like that, never competing against anyone. And then I first got into an on-asphalt go-kart when I was 12, like just turned 12. And so I went to F1 Boston at that time. Now it's X1 Boston. Well, now it doesn't exist, but they changed to X1 Boston, and then through COVID, they ended up falling under. But I went to X1 Boston, and I did some practice day style stuff there. And I ended up getting into a bad accident where I hurt my back pretty bad. And so that kind of threw me off for a little bit because I was young and easily impressionable. And my mom was the one taking me, and, you know, she instilled some fear in me and, you know, about that sort of thing, you know, being like 12 and like having back pain because someone hit me at 40 miles an hour was definitely put me off for a few months. But I ended up going to a different track, an electric track. And that was after about 8 months. I had played car racing video games my whole life, and I'd continued to do that, you know, through that time. Training. Right. And so I went to this electric kart track, and that's where I met the first people I knew who did outdoor karts, because they actually had their own outdoor karts that they would work on in the back area of this electric kart track.
So you got in your accident in an outdoor off-road kart?
No, it was an indoor asphalt kart.
Got it.
Yeah. Someone had spun in front of me, and I stopped. You know, they were sideways, and I'd stopped, and someone came around a bend and didn't see me and hit me dead on.
Now you know next time to just hit that fucking idiot sideways.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. But I started racing at that electric kart track. I raced there for 8 months, and then I got the track record. That was when I was about 13, 14. That was my first track record. And then after that point, I went back to F1 Boston, X1 Boston. I got into their league system and started moving up their leagues. I started at 1B, and then I moved to 1A, and then 1AA, and 1AA was like their top league. So I moved through those consecutively and then stayed in 1AA as long as I raced there and accumulated, I believe, over the 7 seasons that I did, there were several that I missed races in, but I believe I got 5 firsts, 1 second, and 1 third. And there were several races I'd missed in those just because either it was my dad's weekend and he couldn't take me, or, you know, and didn't want my mom taking me, because that was always a battle, you know, oh, you're going with your mom on dad's time, or you're going with your dad on mom's time, right? So it wasn't, you know, the big picture of like just go sometimes wasn't there. Like, frequently it was, but sometimes there was an argument in regards to that. So I thought,
Dad.
No, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. They're all great parents, love me very much. But I ended up getting the track record at all 3 there was 2 tracks there, and then the joint configuration. And the joint configuration was only run twice a year, but it was run in that same configuration for a decade. And all those tracks were for about 8 years at that point running that same configuration. I ended up getting the track record on all 3 of those in their different layouts and whatever. And then I moved to outdoor stuff. After that point, I got into a single speed 2-stroke kart called a tag kart. It's the 125 2-stroke, just a centrifugal clutch and a little kart. But they go about like 80, 85, and they pull about 3.5 Gs in the corners. So, you know, it's a real go-kart in terms of that.
And you're how old at this time?
That was when I was just turning 16.
Got it.
So I think I was 15 at the time I got the kart, but I was going to be 16 soon.
Cool.
And so I raced that kart for about a year, and I didn't do very well, which was for a few reasons. I mean, 1, I was completely new to the outdoor scene. 2, I was running a kart that had been used for several years, which I later found out was not a competitive method to go about. You know, most of the people who are in, I would argue actually all the people who are in at least the top 5 finishing places have brand new equipment within 6 months. So, chassis change every 6 months. Motors get rebuilt every 10 hours on the top end at minimum.
Right.
And then bottom ends get rebuilt every 20 hours. So I didn't realize any of that. I was running a motor that I rebuilt at the start of the year, and I ran the whole year. And it's funny because after I sold that cart, the kid I sold it to actually rebuilt the motor, and he gave me the piston out of the cart because it had a crack on the I don't know what are the walls, the thrust side wall, I guess.
The side of the piston head?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the piston itself, like the skirts that come down.
Yeah.
So,
I call them the skirts.
Yeah, there was a chunk out of the bottom, and then there was a fracture crack all the way up to the ringland.
Where do you think that chunk went?
I don't know. I don't want to know. It was my car. But he gave me that piston as like a memorial, like, this is what you did after, 4 times the recommended service interval on this motor. So
what did Miklo used to say? When the connecting rod bolts start to stretch, things go bad quickly.
Yes, exactly. And somehow things held together for me for at least that last race where it might have happened or whatever.
Dude, Miklo has this story from when his kid called him. He bought his kid like it was like a Plymouth something. It was a muscle car. And the kid called him because he ran out of gas. And when he got there was like a fucking rod through the hood of the car. He was like, is this what it looks like when you run out of gas in a Plymouth Fury or whatever it was? So funny, dude.
Yeah, money shifted.
Yeah. So you just ran out of gas in your car.
Yeah, I need a jump. But yeah, so I raced that single speed cart for about a year. And then against every single person that I asked, moved immediately to a shifter cart at 17. So everyone was like, you're too young, you don't have enough experience, you're not going to do well. I hadn't won a single race in the single speed tag cart. Right. My best finish was 4th. And I think I had that twice, and I was in 2nd for a while in one of the races. But it's actually funny. I ended up slowing down during a yellow caution, and the 2 people behind me did not do that because my friend had spun out in the middle of the track. And so I slowed down under the yellow caution to make sure he was okay and he was all right. I was a 16-year-old kid. I was like, I care more about my friends than a fucking 2nd place finish.
Are you not supposed to slow? Like, are you not penalized if you don't slow down?
They were not slowing down at a portion of the track that was not spotted. So,
got it.
No one
was holding them accountable.
Right, exactly. There was no one holding him accountable. So they ended up catching up to me and both passing me last lap of that race. Otherwise, I would have likely finished 2nd. Anyways, I got a shifter cart at that point, a nice one. It was a good cart and ended up getting the track record at that track, as well as competing very well in that season. I did not end up actually receiving the first place trophy of that championship because I had 4 races that I did not finish out of 10. And miraculously, I was able to still finish 2nd overall in the season, despite 4 race finishes completely duds, because every single other time I got on track, it was 1st in qualifying, 1st in the pre-final, and then 1st in final. And so those points added up.
What were the DNFs from?
From mechanical failures due to incompetent mechanics that were servicing my cart.
Got it.
Because at that point and actually for all of my karting career, I was just going with my mom. I think my dad took me once or twice, once in the single speed cart, and then he came to watch once or twice the shifter cart, but he never worked on the cart or anything like that.
That's so funny. My parents were the exact opposite. My dad took me to every race.
That is funny.
My mom took me to one and she stayed in the car the whole time.
Really?
I think she got out of the car.
It's like the complete reverse from me. My mom would be on the fence watching me, scared to death, watching me go around.
I think my mom got out of the car for my race, but I can't remember.
Gotcha. Wow. Yeah. Total flip for me. And I had a bunch of DNFs due to just complete failures of the mechanics, like loose bumpers that were falling off that I had to get black flagged for, which is when you pull off the track and, you're told that you can't race. I had a situation where a wheel came loose. I had a situation where a tie rod came loose and my alignment started to go all whack and I couldn't drive the cart. It was like threading itself undone. So I had a few of those situations. The motor almost fell off on me one time because motor mounts weren't tightened. And this is someone, by the way, I was, as a racer, for those of you in the audience who are thinking like, Sander, why wouldn't you check those things? When you pay someone $500 for a weekend, A, you think that they're going to check those things. And then B, as a racer, it is not especially when you pay someone to do that sort of thing, it is not your responsibility to double check their work because it completely negates the reason that you're paying them. So that I was supposed to focus on driving and winning, and they were supposed to focus on making sure I made it through the race.
Right.
And, that was obviously not a two-way street with the person I was working with. I finished out my season there, but in that time, I also raced extensively or practiced with various coaches from Dubai who raced competitively in Dubai and then raced in Europe and then came to the U.S. I raced with one coach that had that background in Florida at Anderson Race Park. I raced with Waldos Racing, who now does Formula 2 stuff. They were based in West Palm Beach International Raceway, but now they go down to Homestead, Miami, because West Palm Beach Raceway is not a thing anymore. I raced in Homestead, Miami, of course. Raced extensively in Orlando Kart Center. I raced in Dallas Karting Complex in Texas. I raced in Los Angeles, in North Carolina, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Connecticut. So quite a few states where I practiced and trained with a variety of different coaches and perfected my skills. And it was a ton of fun. It was a lot of fun. I stopped when I was about just coming up on 19. We were completely out of money. My mom and Baba had spent their life savings trying to fulfill my dream. And I'm infinitely grateful that they have done so. I have a strong belief that I still hold those fundamental skills and that I will be able to get back into it once I have the income to do so. And I'm very, very thankful that they were able to fund that dream for me so that I could have attained those skills at a young age. Something that you brought up earlier about the nervous system that I didn't even know, but have, experienced because, when I hop into my sim rig, I still retain a lot of that skill. I still have a good car feel when it comes to driving the Miata around or doing an autocross and stuff like that. So I am very, very happy that I had that opportunity. It was a lot of fun. I had a lot of races. I had a lot of great finishes, had a lot of track records. I think at this point, all of the track records that I ever got they either still hold today, if the track is still open, or they held until the closing of the track. Mm-hmm. I have never had a track record taken away from me and then had to claim it back.
Do you know what's so funny? I drove my parents to the airport yesterday, and it was my girlfriend and I in the front and my mom and my dad in the back. And I had gotten to their house to pick them up 10 minutes late. And I was 15 minutes late. My bad. And my mom got in the car and she was like, "Oh, we're late, I see." And I was like, "Yeah, my girl took a little bit longer getting ready than we thought, but it's okay. If I'm 15 minutes late now, I'll probably only get you guys to the airport 5 minutes late." And she was like, "Well, you can't always control traffic and whatever." And I was like, "I'm going to do my best. Like, I can't promise you the world. If there's standstill traffic, we were going to be late anyways. What's 10 minutes? But I promise you I'll do my best." Yeah. And she was like, "Okay." So we're driving. I'm not doing anything crazy, right? I'm just, honestly, genuinely, nothing crazy. And we're cruising at the speed limit, not passing any cars or anything, just cruising. And my mom pipes up from the back seat. She goes, "Grace, do you ever get scared or nervous when Mason is driving?" Because when Mason's driving and I'm sitting up front, oh my God, it's unbearable. My palms get sweaty. I start to panic. It's just so nerve-wracking. And Grace was like, "No, I feel pretty comfortable with Mason driving." And my mom was like, "Why?" And Grace was like, "Well, I've been with guys who think they're fast before, and it's scary. But Mason doesn't give me that feel." And my mom was like, "I'm always terrified. He gets so close to people and he drives so fast and he brakes really hard." And I'm like, these are all like positives. These are all benefits. But I piped back and I was like,
good throttle application, good brake application.
Those are great. I was like, "Mom, you recognize that that's how I feel when you drive." And she was like, "What are you talking about?" And I was like, "Remember, I'm trained in this." And she was like, "Yeah, right." And I was like, "No, genuinely. Like, I haven't been to a professional coach or anything, but I am best friends with Sander. We've had many sim sessions and many track days, and he's taught me a fucking lot in the few years that we've been driving together." And my mom was like, "Okay." And I was like, it's so funny to me that you don't give, like, you look at Sander and I as kids because we're like the same age. So we're like her sons, right?
Yeah.
And sons are kids and they can't do anything. And I'm like, it's so funny to me that you can't recognize that Sander is actually a professional at what he does. He holds track records that haven't been broken. Sander has gone around a track faster than anybody else ever has and hasn't yet. And he hasn't driven in like 6 years or whatever.
Yeah.
And my mom was like dead silent. And my dad was also silent. And Grace later asked me, she was like, why does your mom freak out like that, but your dad doesn't? And I was like, I think it's because my mom genuinely thinks that I'm a kid and unable to do anything.
Yeah.
And I think that my dad knows enough about cars to recognize that I at least have fundamentals down. And we went racing with my family once, and we were like 10 seconds clear of everybody else. And I think that at that point, my dad was like, oh, okay, they actually kind of know what they're doing. So my dad's comfortable. Because my dad used to not like the way I drove, which is funny because I drove the way he drives, which is all the way back. You can barely touch the pedals and you can barely hold the steering wheel. Dude, I swear to God, he sits so far back. I'm like, if there's an emergency, you can't reach the brake pedal.
I think I got in his car once, like in the driver's seat, to like move it out of the driveway. Yeah, and I wasn't even close to touching the pedal. And I think he's shorter than me.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's wild.
It's crazy. And I was like, so I would drive at like 80 miles on the highway, 80 miles an hour on the highway. And my dad would be like, you gotta slow down, Mason. And I'm like, why? And he was like, sit so far back. They were like, whatever. He was just nervous. Yeah. And I would be too, because I love Greg to death. Greg drives like my dad. One hand, full throttle, right?
Yeah.
My dad doesn't do full throttle anymore, but that's what he used to do. Yeah. Then like I would be nervous about that too. But it's so interesting to me. I think that my mom has the same feeling about me with rowing, where it's like, oh, it's fun for him. Like he likes to do it. And she fails to recognize, and I think it's because not many people have stuck to a craft for so long at our age, but it's over half our lives that we've been doing.
Yeah.
this.
I would love to run the numbers of my racing like you did for rowing. That'd be super interesting. I actually was hoping that I was going to be able to bring my booklet in, because I have about 80% of the printouts I ever received in this booklet, but most of my actually all of my trophies and that booklet is still in Massachusetts. So I don't have it, but it's a 4-inch binder that is bursting at the seams. The thickness of the stack is about that thick. Not even an exaggeration. It is a lot of papers, and that's not even all that I received. Because a lot of them started to get electronic towards the end of my racing time. So sometimes they wouldn't have a printer that worked or whatever.
Right.
But it's always entertaining, especially talking with people about racing or about cars, especially people that don't know you or I, right? Like they'll come up to us and start saying something, and like we have a decision of like, do we correct them and get into a 30-minute discussion, or do we just kind of let it roll and then like get back to whatever we're doing? And it's just, I love being in the knowledgeable racing position, because it's given racing. I mean, we'll get into it through the podcast, but it has given me so much more than the ability to drive fast. Like that is the most like primitive, simple thing that it has given me.
Right.
But in terms of developing me as a person and mentally, it has given me so much perspective, and it felt like 10 years of life condensed down, Like, I mean, I guess my career was relatively long, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, especially my years in outdoor karting, which were like 2 and change or 3-ish, right? That was like 10 years of just like life experience, like dealing with a huge variety of people and going to all these places and competing against people, and, like the mental aspect of trying to get track records. It's like, it's so funny because I've had people get within like half a second of my record, which in racing is an eon, right? And they'll be like, oh, I'm getting there. And I'm like, you have no fucking clue. I won't say it to them because I'm not mean. I'll be like, yeah, go get it, right?
Yeah,
but fucking,
in your head,
yeah.
That's the longest half a second that has ever been.
That every single 100th of that half a second took another extra thing that I had to learn to figure out how to do. And it is down to the wire. Like for example, when I was racing at F1 Outdoors and I got the track record, the day of the track record, I set the only lap time ever recorded in the 58-second times. No one has ever recorded a lap time in the 58 seconds. And for perspective, that track is raced by people not just across the country, but around the world. There were people I was competing against from Europe, from South America, from Asia that come race there because it is a nationally renowned track. And no one had broken into the 58s. I got a 58.912. And on that day, there were competitive people there. The next fastest time was a 1:05.
Jesus Christ.
That was the next fastest time that day.
That's
and I was not on a fresh rebuild either. It was not a freshly rebuilt motor. I finished first that day by a 23-second lead to second place.
That's crazy.
It was I was done with like half of my cool down lap by the time they were still racing in the back, fighting between second and third.
Yeah.
And those gaps are something that I look back on really fondly, because it wasn't just like I won by strategy, or I won by better equipment, or I won because I had a dad who dumped a bunch of money into it, or I won because I got lucky that day, or whatever, right? It was just
I won despite
training, skill, and practice. So much practice, and simulator practice too is a huge help too, because it's way fucking cheaper, right? But it still does teach you those fundamental skills. And I had visualizing techniques and different workouts that I would do to help with certain muscle groups that are more used in karting and stuff like that. And it was just like there was so much passion and effort that went into those records, and it was so rewarding to see like such a margin grow on against the people around me. And the every 10th was like another hurdle I had to get over. And I'm just really, I look back on myself falling, and I'm like, man, like you did it. And then I also look on myself now, and I'm like, but you can do it again, because you still have the skills. You just got to work to figure out how to get there, right? Which is part of the business point.
Yeah.
Right. So
it's interesting that you bring up the 23-second gap, because I calculated my gap to first when I didn't win, because I immediately think, when I didn't win, why didn't I win? And by how much did I not win? That gap is 3.4%, which with rowing, I'm shocked the gap is that small, because I've had some bad losses before that really drag that number down.
Yeah.
But the two that I think of, the two kinds of gaps, are the crushing victories, which I wish I had gone through and also recorded my numbers for my winning margins.
You're halfway there, though. You got a lot of numbers down.
I've got so many numbers down, and I can go back and find the winning margins for most of them, and I can calculate that, but I didn't even think about it, because I was like, I'll count the number of victories in my average finishing position. I won't worry by how much I won, because a win is a win. Who cares? But a win by a wide margin is a lot, especially considering now that my gap to first is only 3%. That's not a huge gap, but that could be the difference between like 1 or 3 off strokes. Like the margins are fine, but the two biggest gaps I remember are the crushing victories by over 15 seconds, and then the very narrow losses of under a second, which in rowing are not super common, and I've had several, and they're so painful, but it's a different part of the podcast.
I hope that I know that I went over. I want to bring some numbers in, because I love the numbers that you brought in. I'd love to see what mine look like. But I hope that like my passion for how much I love racing and loved my karting experience comes through on the camera to the audience too. Like, to those of you watching me, if you get me started on a karting conversation or something like that, you won't hear the end of it. Like, I have such a deep passion for what racing and driving and those experiences and going through the hurdles has taught me. I have such an appreciation, passion for it. I truly love it.
That's what I have with rowing. There are 2 points in here that I've already thought about, and I'm trying to think about like throughout the day so that I don't cry when I talk about it. But the final section I have in this first main introduction, I want to talk about, we've talked about who we are, and now I want to talk about who we've looked up to. I've got a list here of my heroes. Do you have any specifics that come to mind when it comes to winning and championship?
Oh, I have stories for sure. Like, or you mean you talking about people that I've looked up to?
People that you've looked up to, like heroes. Like when you were training, or even are training now, or thinking about it, who are the people that you look up to, and specifically what attributes about them?
I idealize Ayrton Senna completely. Like as a kid, I watched the documentary several times, and I absolutely loved that documentary and watching old clips of him driving and racing. And I think the fundamental story about him that really, I mean, there are a number of things. It's hard to pick, but the one that really captured the essence of what I loved about him that I tried to emanate in me was when he was in that shitty car at Monaco, and he was just crushing it. And then, the radio came on, they're like, hey, like you could slow down, and he immediately hit the wall, And like that story of like, he was so in the zone that like the slightest little distraction was just like the end of that lap for him, And I love that story too, because it's an underdog story. And as a kid, it was like I was seeing I remember the first time I rolled up to a national race. This was still in the single speed days. I went to one national race, and I rolled up with a cart on an open trailer with a Craftsman toolbox I'd bought at Sears at the time, because Sears was still a thing. Actually, they might still be a thing.
I think they're bankrupt.
Yeah. But anyways, Craftsman toolbox I'd bought at Sears and a cart on an open trailer, and I parked in the off space of one of the other people who had a 30-foot trailer with decals on the side, 4 carts that were one for practice, 1 spare, 1 pre-final or 2 pre-final and final carts in case one of them died in one of those races. They had 4 carts for 1 kid, and then they had several mechanics. It was like, easily $10,000 for that weekend alone. And I remember I cried because I was so sad that I was like, I just got there and I was like, I am so fucked. Like, I am fucked, and I was so sad and upset. And, it was like, I was there pretty much alone working on it. I was actually with my dad for that one. That was the one single speed kart race that he took me to. And I was with my dad, and like, he didn't really know a lot about the kart at that time. He was good with like bikes and stuff, but didn't really know a lot about the kart. And I was doing a lot of the tuning and maintenance all by myself, and everyone was trying to do their own thing, so there wasn't a lot of help. And I love that Ayrton Senna story, because he was the underdog that no one really was looking too closely at that point. Like, there were people watching, but he really came out of the woodworks in that car and showed his raw skill. And although I wasn't really quite able maybe to portray that same raw skill by winning that race, I felt as though I was that underdog next to the massive trailer that was just pulling through. That was like doing the best he could and reading books and practicing and doing these little training exercises and eye movement exercises and doing all these little things to try and make myself better and better. And I've always loved the underdog story. And I loved how, whether or not this is accurate or not, the documentary conveyed Ayrton Senna in a way that he was not just an underdog, but also gave back. He gave back a lot to his community and where, Brazil and the town he was from, and to the people around him. And he was champion. And he was a strong believer in his abilities, but he was also someone who gave back a lot. And that's something I really idealized. And that was like the first person that I really was like, wow, like, this is like someone I want to be like. I'd never had that experience of like, I want to be like that person, until I saw that documentary and started looking at his footage and watching his racing style. It was just like art. Like, it was like a Picasso on wheels. It was so gorgeous and unique to watch. And so that's my, I guess, long-winded answer of like the first person I really idolized and briefly why.
I think that when he died, most of his money went to charity in Brazil. I think it was almost $40 million.
Yes, it was a majority of it.
Yeah. It's interesting the difference in underdogs with karting, though, because you can. I mean, we've got a lot about taking responsibility and whatever, but like, fundamentally, at a certain point, if a cart is X amount better than your cart, no amount of skill is going to drag you ahead of that cart. So equipment matters.
Yeah, for perspective, I had a motor so in tag karting, it was supposed to be a standardized motor, which I realized was bullshit, because it was a standardized motor from standardized builders, but every builder was different. And the more you paid, the better builder you got, but no one said that because it was supposed to be a standard horsepower motor.
Right.
So I had a 30 horsepower bone stock Rotax engine, and the guy next to me had a 39.5 horsepower Rotax engine. Right. Bone stock.
Raw skill, talent.
Yeah.
It's all
dynoed at 39.5, like professional.
At the wheels.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
You've got 30 at the crank.
And it's like, if, you pull up next to them, that's well over a second a lap, especially in a single speed kart.
Yeah.
Well over a second a lap. And that's part of the reason why I went to shifter karting, because it was completely open platform.
Right.
So it was like, you just fucking get what you can. Like, just throw it on there. Okay, you want to sleeve the cylinders and do all this weird shit, go for it. Fucking who cares, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I loved about it, because it was just like free for all, just throw shit at it. And I didn't even have the best motor out there, right? I know I didn't, for sure. I had it built by SweetTech. It was a good company, and then redone by Fisher, another company you guys might know. But, it was good stuff, but it wasn't like tens of thousands of dollars. It was, a $6,000 motor when the baseline was a $5,000 motor. And I enjoyed nothing more than people coming up to me and telling me, man, that motor's so quick. Who you have build it? What are you doing? I'm on 25 hours on a piston that should have been changed 15 hours ago.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like that I loved. And it was good equipment and I was competitive, but I loved the accusations of that I was cheating. I loved it so much. It was so like everything was legal on my cart. I was just quicker than you, right? But of course, there are times when, you know, someone next to you has 25% more horsepower in a single speed cart, you know, versus
you do about it.
there is not much that you can do besides defend.
Yeah. That's what every single race in rowing is like. Yeah. Because when you're on your way to the start line, you all launch from the same dock at roughly the same time because you all have to be at the start time at the same time. And you do probably 30 minutes of warm up in a warm up area, and then you all head down the course backward, because you have to go up to the start line and then you come back and finish by the dock usually.
Yeah.
And so on your way up, you're kind of leapfrogging with the people that you're going to be racing against, because like you'll practice your starting sequence. In rowing, we always say that a start won't win you a race, but it can sure as hell lose you a race, because if you fuck it up and someone else gets half a boat length on you, you're done. Like you're not going to come back from that usually. Depends on your crew. But on the way up, you can tell just by the way other crews are rowing roughly where you're going to finish, because you know how well you row, you can see how well they row, right?
Yeah.
If they're skying their blades, if they're catching super late, if they're missing.
It's like
6
practice
inches of
for
water.
karting. Like,
yeah,
you know, the practice session before the quali. You're like,
you never know. Someone, every once in a while, you can pull a miracle out of your ass, right? with racing. But with rowing, it's like, there's no way that crew is faster than me. Even if they're bigger than me, if their technique is shit, there's no way, right? But some crews row past, and there's this, I don't have a name for it, but rowing boats make this sound. When you're rowing properly at maximum efficiency, it's 8 guys moving at the same time. And if I do this, and you do it at the same time, and then 6 other people do it at the same time, it's fucking menacing. And the sound is thunks. And if you can hear that when you're rowing out of sequence, you can't really hear it because it's not all together. But when someone's doing it all together, you can hear it from across the lake. And you can hear everyone exhales at the same time. The oar locks click into place at the same time. You're thunking into the water at the same time. It's aggressive sounding. And you don't even have to be going fast. You could just be paddling to the start line. But if it's like, you know that crew is a fucking competition, right? And at that point, because my boats always did that, at that point, it's like, okay, we both have the technique down. It's just who has bigger legs. And it sucked sometimes, because when you're in a shit boat and you know you're in a shit boat, and like you probably should have worked a little bit harder than one. Dude, it's all over the place. And it feels like shit. Like as off balance as a car can get. It's weird with rowing, because if you had a cart and you go through a corner and it's almost perfect balance. It's almost perfect, right? Maybe you've got a little bit of oversteer, and so you've got to like just counter by like 3 or 4 degrees of oversteer, right? But it's close. It's almost there. You're like, okay, on the next corner, I know just to like, you know, ease off the brake a little bit sooner, right? And then you go through the next corner, then it's a fucking huge understeer. And you're like, the fuck was that? And then you go through the next corner, and now you're like counter steering like 15 degrees. And you're like, the fuck is going on? That's rowing, because every single stroke is different, and every stroke impacts the next one with the balance of the boat. And if you're not in tune with your crew, you're all over the place. Yeah. So coming up to the start line every time, you could really easily tell, okay, who am I going to finish across the line next to based on that? And it really was crushing, because sometimes I would kind of fuck around for a couple months and I'd drop down a boat. My coach would demote me, and I would go into a race, and I would be going up to the start line and feel like shit. I'm unhappy because I like to be in the faster boats, but I fucked around. And this boat comes clicking by, thunk. And I'm like, we're going to get our fucking asses handed to us. And then we would. We'd lose by fucking 30 seconds. And then I would try, and then I get into a better boat, and then I'd whatever. But yeah.
You said earlier that you had over 6 million strokes.
Yep.
Correct?
Yep.
How many perfect strokes do you have, and can you remember them?
So we used to chase, there was this guy, Jack Bainey, who was a couple years older than me, and he used to practice on the erg. He would call it a golden piece. And we used to do this thing called an hour of power, which is where you set your rowing machine for an hour, and then you fucking crush it. You do an hour of rowing as fast as you can.
Got it.
Which feels very different than doing 6 minutes as fast as you can. Because 6 minutes as fast as you can.
Long time.
Yeah, because so you set.
I have
pace.
very little perspective on rowing at all. Mason taught me how to erg on a machine, for like a few months, but I cannot imagine doing an hour of that. I was struggling after the first 2 minutes, and then it was like a 15-minute piece, and you're like, fuck my life, I'm so done. Yeah.
So he used to go for a golden hour. That's what he would try to do. He called it the golden piece, which is your very first stroke is at the perfect split, which is speed. It's how long it takes you to do 500 meters. The perfect split that you're aiming for at the perfect rate, so strokes per minute, and you do that stroke the entire piece. Wow. So an hour at the exact same tempo, at the exact same pressure. And it was almost fucking impossible to do. But in my senior year, I really strapped down and got serious. And I had a couple guys who I was close with, and I was like, guys, the quad is the best boat that we have on the
senior year of high school.
The quad is the best boat on our team, always has been. 4 guys, 2 oars apiece. I want to row the quad with you guys at regionals this year, which was our big competition. And they were like, okay. And I was like, I want to lock in the entire year. And I want to know how you breathe in the boat. And that's exactly what we did. So most people, when you get on the ergs, it's a whole long line of people and you all have the same piece that you're going to do. And then you do it and you're not paying attention to the people around you. You're just doing the best that you can. But with these guys, I was like, listen, if we're rowing in the boat together, we should be erging together too. So we would all line ourselves up really close to each other. Our elbows would almost be touching when we were at the finish. And the entire piece, our stroke man, the guy who would sit in the very front of the boat and set the cadence through a race, would be on the far left, and we would follow his rate through the entire piece. And when you're moving through the rowing stroke, your arms and your legs and your back move at different speeds intentionally. And everybody moves at a little bit of a different cadence. But if you're rowing together, you need to be at the same cadence. So we would take every stroke together on the ergs at whatever power band we chose, but at the same rowing stroke profile to get used to each other. And it got to the point where we did a golden hour and 3 out of the 4 of us hit it. And 1 guy was like 4 strokes off or something like that. But it was all very close. But it was crazy because I had grown up my first 4 or 5 years thinking, oh my God, like a golden hour is fucking insane. Like no one will ever do that, right? But we trained long enough that I think it was March of our senior year. So we had been training for many months at that point, from June or July until March.
Gotcha.
And in March, we were able to do it. 3 out of the 4 of us hit a golden hour together.
Wow.
But in terms of perfect strokes on the water, it's difficult because it's dependent on other people. But there are several that I can remember. There's one that I remember very vividly, which was the first, I think I like to call it the first real stroke of my career, because with rowing, my first 8 years, I was like, oh, I'm a fucking elite athlete. I'm a D1 athlete. I know exactly what I'm doing, right? And there was one stroke. I wasn't being coached or anything specific. It was just a really good boat. We had really good boat feel. And I did one stroke and I was like, holy fuck, that's what it should feel like. Like I've been doing this for 8 years. At this point, I've taken fucking 40 million strokes or 4 million strokes, 40 million meters. And now I realize what it should feel like. That's what a perfect stroke feels like. And I've had, it's probably less than 20. I've had really good races with several good strokes in each of them, but I think like the perfect stroke, maybe like 25, maybe.
Wow.
Over all those. It's difficult.
Yeah, it is. And I wanted to ask you that question too, because you've told me some of that before, and I wanted the audience to really gain a picture of like how, within the wealth of practice that we've both had in our individual racing careers, there are still like tiny fractional of a second split moments that we can remember as like, oh man, that was perfect.
Dude, let me tell you right now, in rowing, you know this already. In rowing, you start training August 1st for your season, and you row every day, twice a day, Monday through Saturday, once on Sunday, every day from August 1st to July 15th. You put in all of those hours of training, all of the sleep you're trying to get, so you're bailing on parties, all of the food that you try to eat properly, all of the stretching outside of practice, all the practice outside of practice, the team bonding, the footage review, the technique training. You do all of that work for a 6-minute race. And I've had races where it comes down to 0.2 seconds of that 6-minute race. So of all of the fucking volume of work, it still comes down to tenths of seconds. Even in rowing. In racing, in motor racing, you're used to seeing tenths of seconds. And in rowing, it still also comes down to photo finishes, tenths of seconds. We've got a ball at the front of the rowing shell. It's a rubber ball. It's called the bow ball. And early days, your rowing coach tells you, listen, all you're trying to do is push that bow ball across the finish line. That's it. Fucking forget who you are and who is in your boat. Forget what your oars are. Forget who your coxswain is or what direction you're going. You are putting all of your force to push that ball over the finish line. And sometimes it still comes down to half a bow ball in the finish.
Wow.
Intense.
I remember, I have several corners that I remember very vividly, but there are two in particular that I want to share because they stick out in different ways. One of them is that record I got at X1 Outdoors or F1 Outdoors. I was on the last corner, the hairpin, and I went into it, and I'd had such a good lap. And that corner was like, every corner was like 99.8%. And then that one corner was like 98.5% instead of 99.8, right? And I was like, I could have gone a little bit fucking quicker. And that one little corner, that my little bit of, I broke like 6 inches earlier, just a little bit, because I knew it was going to be a flying fucking lap.
Right.
And I knew I was going to kill the record, and it didn't matter really what I did on that last corner. So I wanted to ensure I fucking got it, right? And so I just look back at that, and I was like, I wish I'd fucking pushed that little bit, just to get a little bit lower. I remember that corner, and I still think about it. And the other one it was actually an indoor track, K1 speed, and they were electric carts, and it was an indoor track. It was a 14 and change second lap. And I was going for the record there. I'd already had the record there. I was trying to beat my own record at that point. And I remember this was the last lap of my last session for that day. And I was going through the corners, and the way you have to drive those carts is you have to slide them, and the slides have to be perfect. And so I was sliding it around this sweeper that then tightened into a hairpin. And I remember the last lap, I fucking nailed it. I could hear, I didn't touch the rear bumper on the outside wall, but I could hear the wind gap between my bumper and the wall. And then I could hear the same wind gap on every single other corner between every other barrel. It was fucking perfect lap. And I took a picture of the lines from my rear tires. Every single lap I did that day, I did 10 races of 15 laps apiece, so 150 laps. Every single lap was within, the rear tires are that wide, and the skid marks were within that much of each other. Every single one. And I got a 13.999 second lap that day. And the next fastest person on a 14-second lap, the next fastest person is 14.4.
Jesus Christ.
Just over 0.4 seconds faster than the next fastest person on a 14-second lap.
Yeah.
And it was, I look back on those times and I was like, man, that was fucking cool.
It's interesting because I have always said the difference between a good athlete and a great athlete, specifically in rowing, is knowing exactly how much you have left in the tank at any given moment.
Yeah.
Because with rowing, you either cross the finish line and go, fuck, I had one more stroke left in me. Like I have a little bit more energy left in me. Or you cross the line and go, fuck, I gave too much. And then I had to take half a stroke off in the last third there. Like my middle move wasn't great or my sprint was shit. Like I overdid it and I ran out of energy, right?
Yeah.
And so knowing how to perfectly balance it, where you go across the line and you're like, that's all I have. Like that's it. I've only had a couple races like that. One of them I remember very vividly, and I actually texted Thomas and Kyle about it, my rowing friends, about it when I was going through my things. Because as I'm going through these races, I'm like, I remember every single one of these. And I remember exactly how it went. I remember the problems that we had. And with this one, we were a lineup that shouldn't have done well, but we were all good buddies in college. And it was a 6K race, so it's like a 15, 16-minute race, which is a long fucking time for rowing. And usually in this race, I had done the race 6 times at this point, head of the South in Georgia. It's actually on the river between South Carolina and Georgia. It's the border.
I'm so sorry to.
Yeah.
Did you ever do the head of the Charles?
I didn't.
Gotcha.
No. My teammates did, every fall, the top 4 guys on the Florida Tech rowing team would go to Charles.
Got it.
And in high school, the year before I was allowed to row as a varsity member, because I had experience from middle school, but they wouldn't let me do the varsity races. They went to Head of the Hooch in Tennessee, which I had always wanted to go to.
Yeah.
But I remember in this course, there's one major corner that you go through 3 bridges, which is tough, and then you make one sweeping corner. Sweeping corners in rowing aren't ideal.
Yeah.
Because the
Head of
boats are
Charles
straight.
is a lot of that.
Yeah, and
very
it's tight walls too.
Yes.
It's the Monaco of racing.
Yeah,
courses.
the Head of the Charles is a very challenging course. I've watched it several times, which is why I asked.
Yeah. Elizabeth is raced there.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
She's
Very
coxed
cool.
there. Yeah, and so is Justin.
Oh, really?
Justin might have a medal from there, actually. I know Justin medaled at Irish.
It is a very hard course.
It is. So I remember I was like, okay, I know our lineup. I know how we do in rough water. This was a rougher year. And I know how we do on turns. I think that the race is going to go really great. And then we're going to make that turn. And then fucking bow pair is going to start fucking around because they're going to be tired. And the wind hits bow more than the stern because of where the weight distribution is with the coxswain sitting back there. So I know they're going to get tired and it's going to go to shit. And I remember we were going into that turn and then all of us started yelling like, bah! And like as we went through that turn, we just kept the power on. So like we powered through the corner and then we just kept on the power. And I was like, oh my God, we're actually crushing this. And we were the B boat. So like the top boat is all the Lithuanian guys, everybody from the Eastern Bloc that we buy to like crush races. And
Big muscle guys.
we were disgustingly close to them in that race. We didn't medal, but we were the fastest of our category. We were beating other A boats and we were way too close to our boat. And I remember we got back and the Lithos were fucking furious that we were as close to them as we were because we should not have been. They were furious amongst themselves, not at us. We did well. But it's interesting that you mentioned corners because I remember every rowing race and I remember the good ones and I remember the bad ones. But I haven't had as many racing corners to remember because I haven't been in any official races or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I have one corner that I remember, and I told you about it a couple of weeks ago. There's a roundabout coming into work.
Yes.
And I always take this roundabout as aggressively as I can because it's the last bit of road before I go through the gates and I have to drive careful because it's a government facility or whatever. And as I'm coming through this roundabout, there's this dude who can't make up his fucking mind what lane he wants to be in. I don't think he sees me, but as I'm coming, he's going towards the outside of the corner. And normally I take the outside because I can fly through the outside and the guy on the inside is like, oh, but if I overdo it, I hit the wall so they're not scared. If I'm on the inside, they're going to freak the fuck out because if I overdo it, I'm going to hit them and then they'll complain about me, right? But he's angled halfway across the road going to the outside. So I'm like, I guess I'm going up the inside. I don't have a choice. And so he saw me at the last second and freaked the fuck out. And he got in the outside lane as my front bumper was coming up on his rear. So I barely snuck in there. I'm still flying, and now I'm about to go through the corner. And this is the first time that I really understood what moving a car around the rim of a glass meant. This is the first time I felt it, especially with how soft the Camaro suspension is. You feel the whole body roll of the car.
Yes.
And as I did it, I remember I felt the rear left rub on the curb perfectly. And I was like, oh my God, you've seen the videos at Monaco where the drivers brush the barriers with their tires and it doesn't slow them down. It's just, there's nothing left. Like that's as close as you get it. I was like, oh my God, I just did that. That's crazy. That's the first time I've ever done that. That's insane. And I checked my tires when I parked and sure as shit, there was scuffing on just the outside, the most outer edge of my tire. It didn't hit the wheel. I didn't curb the wheel. It was just the sidewall of the tire.
Yeah.
And I took a photo. It was beautiful. But that's the first corner that I vividly remember taking. Apart from the ones I fucked up. Those I remember. I took one in the Firebird real wrong. I snapped the rear axle.
Yeah, there are many beautiful moments that I look back on, and I look forward to sharing them as we go through these few next podcasts and weave in more racing. I'll bring a story time portion to it and bring these racing stories to it. But we've talked a lot about how we've developed as racers, right? We've pursued these great visions and these goals and worked with teams and figured out how to win. What pushes you to not just be better than the rest, but even better than yourself every single day that you get into a boat or you work on business or whatever else? What drives you?
I've done a lot of thinking about it in writing the content for this podcast. And there's even a bit towards the end where I speak. Oh, it's the direct to camera stuff, where I speak to people who haven't found their thing yet. But I don't know. I really don't know. And it's interesting because growing up, I competed in a lot of different sports. And in every single sport, my dad would tell me to get more aggressive and to keep my eye on the ball and to get after it and get my elbows out. And it was the same talk every Saturday morning driving back home. I was sitting in the back with my fucking hands in my lap and my head down. And my dad was like, you just have to get after it. And my mom was like, he did good. And Alex Ramosi has this really wonderful quote, which is mothers are going to tell you that you're special and then your fathers will make you prove it. And I was not. I fucking sucked at soccer, at tennis, at basketball, at baseball. Everything I did, I was ass at. But it took my mom and I sitting at the kitchen counter, her trying to figure out what summer camps to put me in. And she was like, oh, do you want to try rowing? And I was like, sign me up for the entire year. And she was like, you've never tried it. And at this point, I've tried fencing, tennis, basketball, soccer, baseball, dodgeball, fucking pickleball. I've done everything. And I don't like any of it. Karate. I fucking push off every practice. I pretend I'm sick. I don't want to go. I'm a fat, chubby kid. And I've never sprung in a sport like this. And my mom was like, you don't even want to try it first? And I was like, sign me up for every summer camp and then the first full year. And she was like, okay. And so she did. And she was like, I'm going to wait to pay for the first full year to make sure you like it. And I was like, pay right now. And she was like, you haven't even tried it. But I just clicked with it. I just knew that that's what I wanted to do. And from the first day, I was stoked. We didn't even get on the water the first day. I remember we sat in the boat at the dock. We weren't even on the water, really. We were just sitting with one arm on the dock. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do for a long time. It just clicked. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I did quite a bit of thinking on it too. I did. And I don't think I have a definitive good answer, but I have portions that I can bring and maybe we can meld something coherent from it. And one of the things that I want to bring is that it wasn't until recently that I realized this is how I looked at myself, but there was a Hermosi quote that kind of inspired me to look in that direction and then realize that that's kind of a self-reflection of who I am. And I know I'm talking in, vague terms right now, but the perspective that I think I've held through much of my life is I don't necessarily love the person I am right here, right now, sitting in this chair today, but I love the ability I have to be better tomorrow and become the best version of myself, right? I don't know how long the road is to that great Sander the Great, right? I don't know how I'm going to travel it necessarily. I don't know what obstacles are going to get in my way. I can't see the end of it, but I know that I have the drive in me to be able to put one foot in front of the other. And I know for a fact that if I continue to do that, I will make it. Mm-hmm. And it's the love of who I can become and how I can develop. Right. And I think that mindset is what, maybe you could speak to this too, but it takes me out of like comparing myself to others all of the time. Right. There's obviously people in racing that I was like, oh man, how does he do that corner? How does he have that braking? Or, that throttle application is crazy. Or like he's carrying 500 RPM more than me through that. That's insane. Right. Like there was things I was like, how does he do that? How does he do that? But it was always like, I can make it. I can make it happen. I can figure it out. If he can do it, I can do it. And I can do it better because I know I'm capable of infinity and beyond, as cheesy as it is.
Sure.
And that innate, just like, I can be whatever I want to be, is especially in racing and cars. I saw it in myself. And I think that, to live up to that great person at the end of the road is something that I've strived for and something that drives me every day to push a little bit more and try to better myself as a person, And I haven't always gone in the right direction on that road. And I had moments of stagnation or even walking backwards, but there's still that vision out there and there's still that goal. And I think overall, even in the times that I've made 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 1 step forward and 2 steps back, I've always tried to get closer to that. Because I know it's out there and I know I want to achieve that because that is the great person that I want to become, the a compilation of who I dream I could be. And so in terms of one of the things that kind of came up as I was writing this was mentors. And you touched on it earlier with, me talking about Ayrton Senna and how I looked up to him. And I think that I've taken bits from different people either good things or bad things, and I've compiled them together and assessed them for what they are and tried to analyze them and apply them in positive ways to my life, even negative things, to learn from them and apply them to my life.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, in your life, go about mentorship, or who do you look up to? Do you see like the negatives and positives from other people around you and try to kind of meld them into something constructive for yourself, or how do you go about that? Do you have a different method?
With rowing, I didn't really have, I mean, I had coaches, right? But I didn't have like a mentor per se.
Sure.
Every coach has a little bit of a different coaching style. What's really difficult about rowing is everybody has a different rowing style. So you wouldn't think it because it's the same fucking motion like 6 million times, but the way you can take a rowing stroke is very different. And I had different coaches teach me different styles, which I really appreciate because it allowed me to figure out what I like the most. But as far as mentors go, I usually just would follow the person who I would idolize at that time. So like growing up, I really loved Eminem. So I started to swear more and I wanted to be a SoundCloud rapper, that shit. But I have specific heroes that I've written down and what I admire about them specifically that I'll share. So I decided to go with a format of what's an attribute that I aspire to be and then who represents that attribute in my head. So when I think of stoicism, I think of Alex Hormozi. And I admire his self-reflection, his self-confidence, his humbleness, and his ability to control his reactions. And that last one, I am not good at, I recognize. When I get angry, my immediate thought is, how do I make this right? So like Grace had an interview recently with a man who I now hate with vitriol. I've never met him. They took the interview and they interviewed her and he like combated everything that she said. And then he was like, oh, yeah, I'll let you know. And then he didn't. So she followed up. And then he was like, yeah, we're just not looking for new hires right now. And I was like, why would you have taken the fucking interview? Like, that is I just get upset really quickly on behalf of people who I care about. If it's an external situation, I'm slow with it and I'm methodical. But if it's someone I care about, I very quickly heat up.
Now, you said that you immediately want to make it right. What do you mean about making it right? Do you mean like
I want to skin him alive?
Okay, so you're like I want to change change something about the situation so that it fits something that makes more sense to me, essentially, right? Or just makes more logical sense in general.
I think really what it is I struggle with people wronging people who I care about. Because if two strangers had that interaction, right? Like if someone who I met at the bar was like, oh, I had an interview, but it didn't go well. I'd be like, you don't need that guy. Like go interview somewhere else, right? But the fact that it's someone I care about and I have seen the input that they've given and I know that there's genuine, like every piece of the puzzle makes sense except for the fact that I have a hunch that the guy who interviewed her has beef with the guy who referred her. And so therefore he wouldn't hire her for that reason. I don't know. I don't have any specifics, but I struggle with an immediate emotional reaction of send the angry email, accuse them of XYZ and see if they can defend themselves, entrap them into saying things that they don't mean so I can leverage it against them later to get my way because I know I deserve it, right? If I didn't feel that I were owed this or the person who I cared about owed it, like if Grace half-assed her way through her real estate course and then like, failed the exam twice and then was like, didn't take it seriously and then did an interview and didn't get the job, I'd be like, well, yeah, it's because you're doing a shit job. But if you're putting in genuine effort and then it's not being given back to you for a bullshit reason, that pisses me off. But Hormozi is able to control his reactions really well. He takes I'm going to take 20 minutes and think about it. My issue is after 20 minutes, I'm now more upset. And so for stoicism, I really appreciate Alex Hormozi.
It's just funny because, we have similar phrasing in terms of like, what we feel after anger. But, I've always had a very deep self-reflection and a very like, oh man, why'd I fucking do that after that angry moment? And so that's something that's kind of driven me to improve that per se. But, there is also something powerful about the anger too, I find that I want to bring up, I want to get your opinion on too, in that when I was writing about, what drives myself to, pursue my dreams and my goals, what, pushes me to become the best version of myself, I was thinking about like character traits that I kind of seek to emanate. And one of them was like this kind of like broad umbrella of like alpha, just like someone strong. And recently it's funny because I've gotten a lot of clips of like Conor McGregor on my TikTok feed, just when I'm in the bathroom at work and whatever. And like he just has the most like confident I am a god character about him. And I love it. I love it so much. It's like he's the boss. He's the man and he don't give a fuck. Right? And like I don't think I'm like Conor McGregor, right? I'm my own person and I obviously convey myself in a different way. Maybe there are some similarities if we were to meet and chat for 4 hours, but there's this aspect of like, I am the best version of myself and I am confident in who I am and I know that I can kick ass. There's like a Himalayan sized grain of salt in there that I try to pull into myself and strive for every day.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious, do you have this like alpha male drive to like, become the alpha version of who you are today? Or do you see it different? Do you see yourself as alpha today and then you just develop it through time? Or do you see yourself as growing towards it? How do you feel?
I think that the strongest correlation I can make to something that I think about every day, I try to stray away from the alpha style of thinking because a lot of the alpha guys who I know are fedora guys and they freak me the fuck out. But as far as like,
what's a fedora guy?
A fedora guy, it's like a grown man with a goatee and wears a fedora and he practices magic and he really wants a girlfriend but can't
That's
get
how
one.
you see alpha male?
That because when guys talk about being alpha, that's what I think of. The actual meaning of alpha is not that. The actual meaning of alpha is masculine and a leader and strong.
I have a completely different picture of alpha in my brain.
Mine's very meta, and I can show you like clips and shit later, but I understand your meaning, and I am not shitting on you for it. That's the correlation that I have. But
even if you were shitting on me, I wouldn't give a fuck.
So I don't think about becoming alpha, like becoming the best or whatever, because I really don't care about becoming the best. I care about achieving my goals, which usually correlate to beating the other people around me. But go ahead.
I want to touch on that. You say you don't really care about being the best, but do you have this, like I have an internal vision of myself, as self-centered as it may sound, that the best version of myself is the best. Like that best person at the end of my road is like the best of the best. Like I can be anything I dream I can be.
I've got that guy mentality. Has a girl ever asked you, like, do you think you could land a plane?
No, but you could ask me and it would be similar.
There's a meme going around where a girlfriend is supposed to ask their boyfriend if they think they can land a plane.
Yeah.
Every guy says yes, right? And every girl is like,
I'm very confident I could if I had to.
Me too. That's the complex that I have. But I believe wholeheartedly that if you give me long enough to learn anything, I can become the best in the world at it, right? Even delusional shit like basketball, right?
I truly believe that I could spend the next 20 years building a business and great wealth, and at 43 years old, I could hop into a Formula One car and be like Max Verstappen. Like, I genuinely have that belief, as crazy as it sounds.
Right.
Like, I genuinely believe that I can achieve and do that.
Yeah, me too. And I've shared this before with Grace. I call it guy delusion, which is I could do anything. But the thing is, even if you are capable of it, but you don't believe that, you can't. So if a woman is like, can you land a plane? And you're like, I mean, probably, right? The answer is a definite no. But if you're like, yes, resounding yes, the answer is either absolutely or definitely not. But you won't know until you get there, right? Then it comes down to your capability and your performance under pressure. But if you answer no, it's a definite no. If you answer yes, it's a maybe no. It is. But I think that instead of pursuing my alpha, because I think that for you to be an alpha, like of a let's say like the alpha of a wolf pack, right? There has to be a group that you are the leader of or better than. And I don't really strive to be that. I just strive to be the best person of myself. And that ultimately will lead me to be the best of my group, maybe. But ultimately, I think that the closest I can correlate this to, and it's something I brought up in a podcast earlier, is becoming hard to kill, which is just, I want to be capable and I want to be proficient. And other people will likely view that as the alpha term, but that's not why I do it. I want to do it because I just want to be capable myself. But it's interesting. The anger that we're talking about, I think I get it from my mom. Because when I'm hard on myself when I genuinely fuck up. So a couple of months ago, I had a job opportunity that I turned down, and for no real reason other than I thought it was going to be more work than it really ended up being.
You didn't want to fill out your work profile.
Pretty much. And I missed that opportunity. So I kicked myself pretty hard for that, right? In those instances, I don't want to cause a stir, right? But in an instance like this, where someone has earned something and they're not getting it for a bullshit reason, my first thought is, how do I get you out of this picture? So this guy who gave her the interview, who I think has beef with the guy who referred her and who's a dick and I fucking hate him and I want to hurt him, like that guy, my first thought is send him an email putting the spotlight on him and ask him to defend his reasoning because I know it's weak. Then take that email to his boss, show it to him, prove that he's biased, and have another manager interview her who isn't biased because I know he'll hire her because she meets the requirements. My first thought is, how do I get you out of this picture? How do I get rid of the problem? And I think that comes from my mom, because when my mom, like when a Starbucks employee would screw up her Starbucks drink, she tried to get that person fired. Like she had such mom energy. Like if someone was rude or said something offhanded, the Starbucks thing is an exaggeration, but she was very defensive, especially of her kids. So if someone made a remark or something, like she would be on the phone trying to get that person's manager to fire them or get that talk. So I think it's just that like stout loyalty, which I think goes too far sometimes, but it's interesting that you mentioned Conor McGregor. I used to really love Conor McGregor for the same reason that you do. And it's because he's supremely confident. He can back it up and he's got a quick wit, right? But there's one guy who Conor McGregor had a fight with. I don't remember his name. He's some Middle Eastern guy, very quiet. And
oh, I know who you're talking about.
yeah, you do.
He's got the face that like he looks like a bear almost.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Not to be mean, but
he had a fight.
He's like, holy shit, like this guy is fucking shit up.
He had a fight with Conor McGregor, and Conor McGregor was talking shit before the fight. He was quiet, he had his mic down. And Conor McGregor is calling his mom a fucking whore, and he's calling him ugly, and you got a bare face and whatever. And the guy has his mic down, and Conor McGregor's like, let's talk about it. Like that was his whole thing. Like, let's talk about it. Like, pick up the mic. And he just wouldn't do it. He didn't give a fuck. He didn't play with it. And in an interview he gave to somebody, they were like, are you thinking about this Conor McGregor fight? Like, he's saying a lot of stuff. And he's got like, you know, a real big ego. He's pretty confident going into it. And this guy picks up the microphone. He goes, when I fight opponents, I drag them into deep water and they learn more about themselves than they thought they knew. And it's like fucking terrifying the way that he's soulless. He's dead inside. And I think that in that fight, he fucking kills Conor McGregor. He breaks his leg and then he gets on top of him and he's beating the shit out of him. And he's like, let's talk now. And like caving his face in. And that's when I really started to put stoicism on a pedestal over confidence, because there's two flavors of confidence. There's I'm confident and I want you to know about it. And then there's I'm confident and I don't care if you know, but if you find out, you fucked up. If you find out how confident I am, it's because you're already underwater and we're going down.
Yeah, yeah.
And that deep water is where I go when I'm upset at people. There's an instance going on right now, tonight even, maybe, right? Yeah. And my immediate thought is, how do I defend the people I love from potential dangerous situations, right? And I go to deep water. That's where I thrive. And it's so interesting because when we started karting together, you would speak about a flow state when driving. And I've had that once around OKC. I've had the flow state once. And it's very different from what I was expecting. Because, and agree with me or disagree with me on this, when you're karting, a flow state is when you understand the balance of the car and you move through the corners without really feeling like you're slowing down. It kind of just feels like one straight bleeds into the next. And it's a very natural feeling. It doesn't feel like you're putting stress or tension on anything. It doesn't feel like you're leaving anything on the table. It feels very easygoing, right? And it's joyous. Right? It's like I'm in an elevated dopamine state. I'm happy while I'm doing this and I'm enjoying myself. And that's not what I was looking for, because I was trying to get in the groove and get in the flow state on track, but I just couldn't do it for a while. And I realized it's because I was searching for the flow state that I have when I'm rowing. And the flow state that I have when I'm rowing is deep water. Well, because the feeling that I have when I'm karting and chasing someone down and I'm like, I'm going to get this motherfucker into the next corner. I'm going to do it. I'm going to brake later and I don't even fucking care. Dude, this guy's going through the roundabout and he can't figure out what lane he wants. I'm going to put my nose in there anyways. And we'll see what he does. Like, it's very like aggressive, but when I'm rowing, I feel that way before a race. Like the weeks leading up to it, I'm like, these motherfuckers. But the day of the race, I turn the radio off. Like everything, it gets very quiet. You've seen me. Remember when we did the qualifying karting for SAE and I got very quiet? It's because I lock in and I tune everything out and I'm very focused. And with rowing, you do the same. It's not different corners. You do the same one motion over and over and over again until you're too tired to do it. And you're only 200 meters into the race. So you still have another 5 minutes to go. And then you have to keep doing it. You have to do it perfectly. And you have to counteract whatever flaws that your crewmates make, or make sure that you're doing well enough that you're not causing flaws that your crewmates account for. And then that throws off the balance of the boat. So really a flow state for rowing is, can you turn your brain off? Can you stop focusing on the pain? Can you stop focusing on the noise around you? Can you stop focusing on the boats next to you? Can you stop even focusing on what your crewmates are doing? And can you just focus on your motion and the feel of the boat? And can you do that while every part of your body is screaming at you to stop? And so I think a lot of athletes have this, but it's very different in karting, because in karting, it's like a dopamine hit for me. And in rowing, it's not that at all. It's like an absence of thought and an absence of feeling. It's kind of like meditation. It's almost like meditation. There's no sensory.
It's interesting that you make that comparison, because for me, I could probably count, despite the fact that I have had many more laps than this and many more crushing races and great victories and awesome corners. I've had many more than this. But the amount of times that I've had a genuine state where I felt as though I went to another playing field, I could probably count on less than 10 fingers.
Yeah.
You know, and they weren't even full laps necessarily. There was some that were close to full laps, right? But it's this state of like kind of what you said about meditation, where it's like I am no longer really driving. Everything slows down. I feel every single input, every grain of asphalt, every single motion I have. And it's like complete. I feel as though I am symmetric with every extension of the cart that I'm in. And it's like a boat. It's like you ride these waves and you can just make little tweaks, and you almost make tweaks before they even happen. So they don't even exist, but they exist like to an outside. If I watched a video, you'd never see a tweak. Even if you spent 10 hours analyzing, you wouldn't see a tweak there. But it was because there was some inch of my body movement that made this tiniest little adjustment because of this paint stripe on the ground that I felt, for the past 200 laps that I finally nailed on a 201st lap, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this beautiful state of meditation where it's like complete peace. Mm-hmm. And it's like the cart is screaming, like, it's vibrating. The G-forces are, approaching 4Gs in the corners. But it's this, like, complete calm of, like, just serenity, and it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. And that's what I chase, mm-hmm. And I think the one I've retained a lot of the skills, the skills are practicable. But the one thing that I hope I really retain is the ability to get into that state. Because it's so beautiful to be in there. It's like I have a bubble of, like, this is going to sound weird, but it's like a bubble of beauty, mm-hmm. Between me and the cart and the ground. Mm-hmm. And it's so hard to describe. Yeah. It really is, but it's gorgeous. It's so amazing.
The word peaceful only comes to mind with one race for rowing for me. Every other one, I think it's borderline sociopathic. It's you're dead inside. Like I try to shut my entire body and mind and emotion down. I try and just cancel it, because if you think about feeling anything, it's just going to hurt because you're pushing your body to the limits. So it's easier to not feel than to try to feel, because you'll just hurt. But there was one race, it was my second to last race in high school ever. And I knew that the last race of high school ever wasn't really super important to me. The group of guys I spoke about earlier who we did the golden hour with, it was the quad. It was that race. We made it to the regional competition and we went out there. It was a beautiful, beautiful morning. We were the first boat on the course. So the rest of my team wasn't there. They weren't there to watch it. We were really, really strictly alone. And we started the race, and I knew within like the first 20 strokes, I was like, okay, we're not going to win this race. We're not going to qualify for nationals even. This is my last time in this boat, and I need to appreciate every second of every stroke. And that was the only race where I felt like a peaceful serenity, even though it hurt. I paid attention to the emotions, and I remembered as much of that race. I still remember moments of that race more vividly than any other race, and it's because I intentionally tried to picture it. And the race after that, my actual last race of my high school rowing career, was those 4 guys in an 8. It was the 8 that we had been rowing all year. And in my freshman year, I had gone to that Southeast Regional Competitions, the Southeast quadrant of the United States. It's like 12 states or something like that. And if you get in the top 4, you qualify for nationals. And in my freshman year, I was pulled up to the second fastest boater on our team, which freshmen never do. And we medaled. We got 3rd. We technically qualified for nationals, but since our top 8 wasn't going, we couldn't go either. And I was like, fuck it. If I'm reliant on the top 8 to go to nationals, then I'm just going to try and win this race in the second 8, because the top 8 had a lot of drama and I didn't want to row with those guys. So I intentionally asked the coach my senior year, I was like, can I stay in the second 8? It's so much more fun. I vibe with the guys better. And he was like, yeah. So in that race, the last race I ever did in high school, it was the same race that I had medaled in my freshman year, and we finished first. We got gold by a fucking, I would think it was like 12 seconds or something. We fucking crushed that race. And I don't remember nearly as much about that race as I did the one before it, because those guys were so special to me and I had that feel in that boat. But every other rowing race, it's like, try to shut everything down. So when I'm karting, that's what I'm like, that's my instinct, is when you're racing, it's like, okay, turn everything off and like, just let your body do it. Like, just let the muscle memory take over. But I haven't driven enough to have that muscle memory. So I haven't really been able to get it.
It's, as you were talking, I was also trying to think about how to better describe this flow state that like you and I have experienced. And I thought of this once. I don't know why this connection plays in my head. I've never told this story to anyone. Mm-hmm. I was racing in Homestead, Miami, and this was off the track completely. I was off the track. I was done for the day. I was going with my mom and Baba to the Miami beach. And we were just going to chill and, relax for the afternoon. It ended at like 3 or 4, so we still had some afternoon left where we could relax. And there was this, this is a weird story, but it connects. There was this girl that I saw walking across. I was walking from the beach to like the hotel area. We were going to get some food or drinks or something like that. And there was this girl, it was super crowded, and there was a girl passing over the bridge. And like we made eye contact. And like one of the most gorgeous people I've ever seen in my life. Just jaw-dropping stunning. And it was like, it wasn't one of those moments where I felt like I looked at her and she didn't look at me, right? It wasn't like me like, whoa. And she was just like, oh, whatever, right? It was like we made significant eye contact for like, it wasn't even significant when you look at the numbers. It was probably half a second worth of eye contact. But like in that half a second, it was like, all of time stopped. I can still visualize exactly that moment when I saw her. And it was like, you could see through their eyes, but it like, their eyes like just painted this emotional picture that was like just encapsulating. And that like encapsulating feeling when you make eye contact with just someone and it's just this like magnetic draw is like the only feeling I can compare what it feels like to when I make like a perfect corner. It like, I don't mean this to be like a sexual analogy in any way or anything like that, right? It's just
it's
like
beautiful and not sexual.
It's this completely one wholesome, immersive emotion that's this like love and connection. That's like, and it's so brief at times. Like in karting too, it is so brief. You get like glimpses into it. But it's like you remember those moments for your whole life. And it's this beautiful, wholesome connection. And that's what I have in the flow state of karting.
I can't wait to feel that in karting because it sounds so much more pleasant than the flow state from rowing. But it's funny that you tell me that story because as you were thinking about it, I was like, I wonder if I've ever had a moment like that. And I have, and I totally forgot about it until now. And I swear to God, I'll remember this until the day I die. It was every day after Saturday rowing practice, all my buddies and I would go to Bagel World. You live down the street from Bagel World. We would go there for breakfast.
I guess I do. I didn't know.
Yeah, it's just down the road from Longdock.
Oh, I've been there once.
Yeah, Bagel World.
Yeah.
So we all would get breakfast there, and you order, get your food, and then you pay on your way out. Honor system, Satellite Beach, you know how it goes.
Yeah.
And I remember one day we were on the way out and we were cashing out, and I went first. And there was a girl at the register, to this day, one of the most beautiful women I've ever seen in my entire life, in a small beach town, a nobody, right? Stunning, piercing green eyes. And we made that kind of eye contact, and we had an awesome interaction, and I cashed out, and I didn't even think anything more of it. I was like, man, she's just stunning. And then my buddy cashed out, and we left, and I was like, we were in the car, and I was like, did you see that girl in there? And he was like, I think you guys are in love. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, dude, I cashed out, because I noticed her too. And when I paid, she did not make eye contact with me. She did not talk to me. She didn't say anything. She didn't even tell me my total. She just handed me the receipt. That was it. But like, you guys made eye contact and conversation. I think you probably should have given her your number. And I was like, huh, okay. Yeah. And like, we kept going. And like, I've never seen her since then. Fucking maybe my soulmate, who knows? But she fucking, like, I've never seen her again. And it's such an interesting moment. Then I remember, I'll text my buddy after this, Zach. I bet he remembers this. But he was like, I can't believe that we're just leaving. Like, that's a romantic movie. You just walked right out of that. It was so funny.
Yeah, it's like the closest thing I can describe it to is like the sound effect that's like, and it's just like everything.
Yeah.
It's like
the background fades out.
It all fades. It's just like,
yeah.
But then it's only there for like a split second. You get a glimpse.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes if you're lucky, you get a little bit longer of a glimpse.
Yeah.
But it is so hard to attain.
That's kind of like what the perfect stroke is.
Yeah.
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 So I think that the racing flow state is kind of like the rowing perfect stroke.
Yeah.
Yeah. I cannot race without getting into a flow state for rowing, because otherwise it hurts too much. You're just going to do shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you pay attention to what's going on, you're fucked. But
it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So the rest of my heroes, since we're still on the first bullet point, is mindset. I love Michael Jordan's mindset. He's got crazy determination. He's got crazy competitive hunger, and it's like an insatiable need to win. Mm-hmm. I love Max Verstappen's aggression. He is constantly in the pursuit of victory. He's unafraid to back out of a fight to live another day. To Max, it is victory or death. And that's very much how I feel in many competitive situations. Where I think I differ from Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan gets upset if he loses at anything, even something he's never done before. I don't. If I'm playing a game of pool and I lose, I don't care. I'm not training. I'm not trying. But if it's something that I put effort into and I get beat, I get pissed. And that's when I hate losing. For passion, I have Ayrton Senna. Because he, unlike many other drivers, has a pure love for his craft, and he elevates racing above an operationalized action. So a lot of people will tell you that when you go through a corner, you have to, it's literally as simple as physics, right? It's you brake, you let off the brakes, you let all the way off the brakes as you roll onto the throttle, then you exit the corner and you try and take the geometric line, whatever, right? But Senna doesn't explain it that way. He explains it with passion and with soul while also telling you what needs to be done to get the car to move.
Yeah.
And he just, it's the same instruction. It's the same physics, but there's so much more love in his descriptions of them.
Yeah. A soul is a really good word for it.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's, there's something about, like, I was listening to one of my favorite, like, I guess this is a soul song, At Last by Etta James, if you're familiar with it. It's like an older kind of soul song. I would say it's soul, You guys can debate in the comments, but it has that wholesome, beautiful feeling, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
And one thing that I wanted to connect to, that as you were talking, I realized this, but earlier on, I was like, I love the Conor McGregor vibe, like the I don't give a fuck vibe. And then I said something like, I'm not like him, but I love that about him.
Yeah.
Right. And I think you touched on the aspect of why I differ, but also why I appreciate it. And it's that I think, at least from my own perspective, I'm relatively stoic in how I go about, like, my tasks and my day, and like, or I feel as though at least I'm relatively humble when it comes to, like, when I help people with racing or, with business stuff or whatever. And it's like, I feel as though I have a naturally kind of relaxed and like humbled approach to these things, and I don't mean that to sound like braggy. That's not my intent, right? But it's like I know that I won't be aggressive like Conor McGregor, although I see the reflection of his confidence that I want to emanate inside of me through a completely different way of conveying it. And I think it's that like more relaxed and humbled way of going about it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
At all?
Yeah.
Do
It's
you
like,
agree or disagree? I'd love to hear your opinion on it because this is just from my perspective.
I don't see any Conor McGregor in you, but I see a lot of Senna.
I appreciate that.
The passion and the way that you speak about it is not strictly operationalized. There's soul behind it. And it's interesting.
That is probably one of the best compliments I've ever received.
It's interesting.
I really appreciate that.
It's interesting because I think that's why Senna is still such a prominent figure.
I'm sorry, man.
It's okay.
I feel bad.
That's why Senna is still such a prominent figure. I don't think that I'm like that. I think I'm much closer to a Mika Hakkinen or a Kimi Räikkönen. Maybe not Räikkönen because he's soulless, but somebody who cares about the craft but doesn't have such a deep interpersonal connection with it. But I think that I see a lot more of that in you in the way you speak about it. I mean, think about the kids who came up to you and accused you of having a cheater engine or a cheater car, right?
Yeah.
They don't have that, right? Have you ever gone up to someone and accused them of having a cheater engine because they were faster than you?
No,
may not have
They
had
actually told me they were cheating and I didn't even care.
Right. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that type of, and I see that especially when people come up to you or us and they start talking about racing and we have that decision where it's like, are we going to actually talk about this or are we just going to let them fly, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that every time we go into a conversation about it, if we decide to engage and have that conversation, it immediately gets personal and emotional. And if that person doesn't reflect that, then you get more upset and then more personal and emotional about it because they don't understand. And now you need to tell them what they should be feeling because this is an important thing. And that's what Senna had. It wasn't I mean, it's my job. It's what I do, right? It's not the Raikkonen, like, I'm just going to crash out of fucking the race and then go to my yacht.
Right.
Right? It's if I crash out of the race, I'm going to sit on the sidelines and listen to the way that the throttle moves on the exit of corners because I can tell that Jordan has a braking system that isn't like other cars because I'm sitting here on the corner paying attention. And I normally am in the race. It's like that.
Yeah.
My next person is for charity, and that's Keanu Reeves. And I think it's because he has genuine compassion for people, and that's reflected in the privacy surrounding his giving. When he gives to people, it's not a public thing. He doesn't hold galas. He doesn't announce it. Keanu Reeves gives a shitload of money to charity. Nobody knows about it. It's like very rarely implied. So those are the
His story is incredible too.
Yeah.
Like, with his family. I believe both of his parents passed away.
Yep.
And siblings as well,
Yep.
right? Yeah, he has a really incredible story.
So those are the 5 attributes and the 5 people I have connected to it to wrap our introductory portion on what it takes to be a winner in a champion. So I'll move straight into our first segment, which is win at all costs. This is interesting because what do Ayrton Senna, Michael Schumacher, and Max Verstappen all have in common? They would sooner crash themselves and their rivals out of a race than lose it. I have specific examples. Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost in the 1989 Formula One Japanese Grand Prix. Second to last, the penultimate race of the season, Senna needs to win both to take the championship. He gets a bad start. Prost gets ahead. Senna catches back up to him on strategy. There's only a few laps left in the race. Like he's got to pass Prost, but he just can't do it. And so he fucking throws it up the inside, a corner he will never make at the chicane, the penultimate corner at Suzuka. Both of them just run right out of the road. Prost gets out of the car. Fuck you, Senna. And Senna has the marshals push him off. He keeps going. He wins the race.
Yeah.
And then he's disqualified because he got a push start from the marshals. He loses that championship. Right. But it was either we're both out or I'm winning. 1994 Australian Grand Prix. Michael Schumacher's fighting for his first title. He needs to finish ahead of Phil Hill for this race. He's in the lead. He makes a mistake. He runs off the road. Phil Hill is catching him. He's about to pass him. Michael rejoins the track unsafely. Phil Hill can't quite get past him, but he's going up the inside of this corner. And Schumacher takes the apex way more aggressively than he would have if the car wasn't there to crash into Phil Hill. Michael's done. He's in the wall. He's crashed, but so is Phil Hill. He takes it into the pits. His suspension's fucked. He can't get back on the track. Schumacher wins the championship. That's his first championship win. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, the 2021 entire season, every single race was this way. It was Max going into a corner, and it was either we're both crashing or you're going to let me through. The entire season, right? And what I want to speak to on this is it's understood differently for each of these people. People look back on Senna, and he's a hero. Even that Suzuka accident, people look past. Same deal with Michael Schumacher. People like, you go back and you watch that 1994 thing, and you're like, bah, but he's still like a Schumacher, right? And right now, everyone is at the point where many people still hate Max Verstappen because of the 2021 season. It's still fresh, even though the 2023 season was so dominant. They still are like that. But I'm certain that as time goes on, that will wane and Max will be remembered similar to Senna and Schumacher. But what's interesting is, does this will to win sour their victories? Taking someone else's chance away to preserve your own, does that sour their victories? Because Lewis Hamilton doesn't drive that way.
Yeah.
He lives to fight another day. He'll back out of a corner because he knows a championship is won on points across the season, not wins across the season.
Yeah.
That is not the approach that I have. The approach that I have is I would sooner crash both of us out than have you finish. Not you specific, but like a person.
Right. No.
But I often reflect on that because I think to myself, is that fair? It's certainly not fair. It is racing, but it's certainly not fair.
You know, I think, at least for me personally, I have that like dog in me that's like, what can I do to win? What edge can I get? But there is something that I feel is much more wholesome about winning and having it completely fair or even not in your favor that I really love, right? And that's why I love that Senna story about him going through Monaco and, you know, just like so much more gracefully than anyone else. And then it's like one distraction and he hits the wall and he's done, right?
Right.
Or I love the underdog story about, like, you know, the guy who had the worst car, but he pulled it together and pulled it through and did this miraculous, you know, stint. And, you know, now he's close to leading and he can almost make it there, right? Like, there is something much more complete and whole for me about those kinds of wins, you know? And I remember there was one race that, you know, I was indoor karting still at this time, and all those indoor karts are a little bit different. You know, sometimes you get a fast one, sometimes you get a slow one. And the person in front of me had maybe a slightly faster kart, but even then, like, let's say comparable, right? And his kart, one of his tires started to lose air, and so it started to go flat. And so he started to slow down and slow down and slow down. And I was able to pass him and win that race. But it didn't really feel like a win because we were neck and neck up until that point. And so it just felt like it felt a little more sour. Like there was a part of me at the end of that race that I was like, I wish I could split these points with you because you did so well, and it wasn't even on you at that point, right? So I think there is something more complete about like the just outright wins, but there is definitely still an aspect of me that's like, what can I do to win?
Yeah.
Right. Do you think that you carry that mindset into everything you care about, or like, let's say, into rowing and business and karting and, you know, other hobbies or stuff that you like to do or whatever? You know, we don't really have many more hobbies, but, you know, like, do you feel like once you get passionate about something, you always carry that perspective into it? Or do you have like certain things that you've done throughout your life that you had a different perspective on? Like you wanted a kind of like fair, even playing field. For example, maybe martial arts or something like that.
I think that I've never had it in rowing. Never at all. I've never had the win at all costs in rowing. I would never steer out of my lane to crash another boat out to win a rowing race. But I think that's because it's a strictly even playing field. I recognize that guy is giving 110% and I'm giving 110% and we both hurt. And we're in our own lanes. Like, we're not interfering with each other. So the only, like, you can't do anything to negatively impact my race because you're in your lane. So do your thing. If you beat me, we shake hands like gentlemen. Yeah. A big lesson that I carried away from rowing was how to win with grace and lose with dignity. And either win or lose, you shake your competitor's hand. And we would do short races in all years of rowing where you don't have medals. So the losers give the winners the shirts off their back. And I gave away many shirts and I won many shirts. But every single time there was mutual respect between the rowers. I think the reason I don't have that with racing is because someone can take a corner that negatively impacts my line, and therefore I'm going to get ahead of you no matter what.
That's an interesting differential. I think I still see like the person behind in the other. Like I see the person in the other car. I see behind their helmet, and I like know how they're feeling, and I like empathize with that even in like the hardest of competition.
In rowing, I'm more of fighting with myself to see how much I can pull out of me. But when I'm on track, in rowing, I can get ahead of you without passing you. Like in karting, you cannot pass somebody without taking a better line and influencing the other person's position on the track. It's impossible unless you blow by them on the straights.
Right.
But in rowing, that's the only way to pass somebody because you can't get into their lane and cut them off. So in karting, at least, and maybe it's because I'm still green, but I believe that aggression should always be met with more aggression. I've got a Sun Tzu quote from The Art of War. Attack is the secret of defense. Defense is the planning of an attack, which is interesting. It essentially is the best defense is more offense.
Yeah. I do agree to a certain extent, but there's still a part of me that's like, I want my offense to be so prevalent that I don't even need to worry about like defense, right? I'll rephrase that. I want to be so proficient at what I'm doing that I don't even need to worry about like other people making aggressive moves on me or like, not starting in first and having to like work up to this guy or whatever. Like I just want to be like wholesomely dominant in racing.
I think that, so there's only been one time at OKC where we've actually been next to each other, corner through corner for like almost a lap. And I give you respectful racing room because I have respect for you. There's another time where you were racing against these fucking kids and they did not give you the respectful racing room and you were dive bombing because fuck those kids, right? There's one time, if you remember, it was the first turn one at OKC into the double right. And I fucking sent it down the inside and I way overshot it and we both went super wide. And I don't remember who came out of the corner. Either I came out and you passed me shortly after, or you came out and got a better line. But I fucking threw it up. But my methodology there is, okay, the only way I'm making it past Sander is if I do something he doesn't expect. This meets that criteria. And if I'm able to throw a fucking wild move like this and make it stick, I deserve that. I'll take it, right? And if he wasn't expecting it, that's on him, right?
Right.
Not actually fuck you. Because
I get it though. I get it.
To a regular person, that's my attack method.
I've been stuck behind families of 4 in go-karts before. And
so aggressive.
I try to be aggressive on passing, but I still try to completely avoid hitting them or touching them or influencing their race because they're just kind of having their own time. I want to be in my own flow in my own zone, and I don't want to interrupt their experience, but I want my presence to be known by the gap I pull on them after.
Interesting. I do the polar opposite. I'll go through a corner on their inside. They'll see that I'm there and they'll give me room and I'll still run them wide. I have the grip. I can make a tire turn, but I still run them wide to let them know when I'm coming up on you, get the fuck out of my way.
Yeah.
A family of 4.
A family of 4 in a go-kart.
Can you imagine how aggressive I'll be when I learn how to actually fucking race? But it's interesting, the motivation behind that, because the motivation with rowing is very different from the motivation of karting. And it's interesting because they're both forms of racing and they're very different in my approach to them. I took the rowing approach to motor racing when I started, and I'm now learning that it's a totally different mindset I have to be in and I have different goals. But I was listening to the Trump interview with maybe it was Tucker. No.
Was it the one with the comedian recently?
Sean Ryan. No. Oh. I don't fucking know. It was one of them. Who cares? The quote was, do winners love winning more than they hate losing? What motivates them? And I've got some interesting anecdotes here. Michael Jordan once lost an NBA championship. He won 3 in a row with a team that had never done it. He led that team to victory. And in their 4th year, which would be the first time in NBA history that a team has won 4 years in a row, they got to the last game and lost. And Michael Jordan went to deep water. And the next season, everyone would get up for like the 8 a.m. practice or whatever, and Michael would already be there training. And so then, they would go about their day and whatever, and they'd be like, Michael, you should come out for drinks with us tonight. He's like, I've got training in the morning. They're like, yeah, us too, but like, we handle it. He's like, I train before you get there. And they're like, we know, we see you there early. And he's like, no, you don't know. I get up at 4:30 and I train, and then I go shower and I get food, and then I'm back at 8 when you get there. And they're like, what? And so Michael rallied the team around, because everyone was like, fuck, he's outworking us by a full practice every day. So then everyone started to come to the 5 a.m. Michael training sessions. Dude, The Last Dance documentary on Netflix is just otherworldly.
I still have to watch it. You've recommended
It's
it to me
incredible.
several times. I really do need to.
For your birthday gift, we're going to watch a film. I really want it to be The Last Dance, but it's not. It's going to be something else. It's also good, but The Last Dance is just so incredible. Because
Last year we watched Wolf of Wall Street, and that was great.
Another on winning and losing. This is a really interesting dichotomy. I think I talked about it in the last podcast, actually. I might have. Charles Leclerc won the Monza Grand Prix in Italy.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an Italian man who's an announcer, and he was so overjoyed. All of the fans, the tifosi, flood the track. The scenes are absolutely incredible. There's more people in a small, condensed space than in the entire history of the world. And it's all Ferrari fans. And when Ferrari wins, Italians are so full of joy for whoever the driver is, because they're Italian and it's Ferrari. And oh my God, I'm so excited for him. And they're full of love. And when Americans celebrate their victories, say in football, it is not out of love. It is usually out of misplaced anger. It's aggression. It's fuck yeah, it's
burning couches.
It is. It's burning couches. Yeah, it's fucking angry, and it's like, we fucking got him. It's raw energy.
Yeah.
And that's interesting, because I sometimes feel raw energy, but I do not in karting or in rowing. In rowing, I was taught and still do win with grace. When I win, I know that you gave 100%. I respect you for doing it. I may have won, I may have lost, but I respect you regardless. And I feel like with Italians, there's also that level of respect. There's not with many American sports. And it's an interesting dichotomy. I don't know why it is that way. I don't know where that aggression comes from, but it's just an interesting difference, because it feels like Americans hate losing more than they love winning. It feels like Italians love winning more than they hate losing.
Yeah, this is a really cool topic, and something I wrote down a couple of notes about it, and I feel as though, at least in my opinion, winners love winning. I think that they love winning as a wholesome, kind of that European love, right, per se, in our analogy. But losing is such a powerful losing is such a powerful learning tool. And I think that if you hate losing, directly hate losing, you kind of miss out on the learning opportunity that losing provides. Mm-hmm. And so I think, at least in my opinion, it's important to embrace the losses and to treat them with respect and with care, so that you can grow and love the win once you get it. Mm-hmm. In the end, right? And it's always important to embrace those losses. And, I think that you also gain power and strength from loving both your successes and failures in that same way. Do you feel like how have you learned from your losses? Or how do you approach losing versus winning? What is the differential there, and how do you distinguish or, feel with either of those two?
When I win, I'm untouchable and I am God. And when I lose, I'm a fucking idiot and a piece of shit, and I need to figure out what went wrong. So when I win, it's divine intervention and I am the best. And when I lose, I really operationalize it to try and figure out what went wrong. So with rowing, it's as simple as I didn't sleep enough, I didn't eat enough, I didn't train hard enough, my legs aren't big enough, etc. But for my wins, it's like I just did enough work. And that's what I really love about rowing compared with other sports. Football, there's always drama. Even motor racing, there's drama.
Yeah.
But rowing is similar to running in that you're not interfering with each other's races. You're just racing next to somebody, and whoever's faster wins, period. Yeah. Like, you don't really fuck up. It's just, did you do the work or not? And that taught me from a young age. And it's like, if you want to win, you just have to do the work. But I feel that winners love winning and winners hate losing. I think that's a blanket statement. I don't think it's one or the other. I think they serve They choose the one that serves their reality. So I have two examples. Michael Jordan has a notorious game called the flu game. Turns out it wasn't the flu, it was food poisoning. But he had terrible food poisoning. His entire team was like, oh, fuck, we're going to lose without Michael because he scores more than half the points for our entire team. And he showed up sick as a dog, almost throwing up on the court, like fucked up. And everyone's like, oh my God, Michael's going to suck, right? He didn't sit out one quarter. He played the entire game. And both Michael's team was in the lead by halftime. And they were like, oh my God, we actually might win. And by the third quarter, they were like, oh my God, the other team might forfeit. He was playing so well at such an elite level. It was past the point of, are we going to win or not? It was, how much can I win by? At that point, he had decided he was going to win that game. And it was just by how much. And even sick, he played at the highest level and absolutely dominated. So when you want to win, you love winning. I have a story. When you hate losing, there's nothing worse. I have rowed at 4 state competitions in my time rowing in high school. You go once a year, and I haven't medaled at any of them. And that's interesting because in my freshman year, I did not row with this boat, the second varsity 8 at states, and I was pulled up to row with them at regionals. So I got the opportunity to race at the bigger event, and that's where we got our 3rd place medal. And in my final year, I'm in that same exact boat at states. We've been training together all year. We're elite. We love each other. We row really well together. And we got 4th place by less than 1 bow ball. It was a 0.4 second gap. So it was literally, I've got a photo. It's this far that we got 4th and missed out on a medal. And I was so pissed at that loss. Dude, I sat the entire bus ride home and the entire night at the hotel. I sat down with each one of my rowers and I was like, look at this. And we watched the video back 4 times. And so I saw it 4 times 8, 32 times. Like I watched it a lot, incessantly. And from that point, that race was in April. We had until July 13th or 15th to train for regionals because we got 4th. So we still qualified for regionals, so we can still go and compete. But we hit that 3-month stretch so hard. Every single day I would start practice by going, what's 4/10 to you? And we trained so hard. And then that was the year that I went back to the same event that I got 3rd my freshman year, and we got gold. And we won by 12 seconds. Like we crushed. And so I think that when you're winning, you use your love for winning to motivate you. And when you are losing, you use your hatred of losing to motivate you. You pick the reality that serves.
This reminds me of your crocodile that just ate analogy.
Yeah.
You know, it's if you want to tell it, you tell it better than I do, I think.
Yeah.
I like the way you tell it. It's conveyed
with
passion.
Yeah. It's, how does it go? It goes, are you not hungry anymore? Are you satisfied? Oh, it starts like this. I know how to kill a crocodile. You wait until it eats, because after it eats, it becomes almost paralyzed. It falls into a state of calm and it sinks into the water. And it's so focused on digesting, it doesn't move. It's not hungry. It won't defend itself. So what have you eaten that's gotten you so full? Why are you not motivated anymore? What success have you had that you think is enough to not work anymore? That's kind of how it goes.
Yeah. It's reminds me of that.
Yeah.
Reminds me of that.
Yeah.
I've had experiences where I haven't learned from my losses and I have learned from my losses.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I think I would encourage anyone going through an entrepreneurship journey or, you know, that has a passionate hobby or, you know, relationships or whatever, right? Like when you make mistakes, embrace them, because I've learned so much more from embracing my mistakes, analyzing them, like you said, and figuring out how to improve for next time, right? When we go through loss, we're able to learn from that experience and, you know, take the best out of it and move forward, right? And a lot of people I've found kind of get into this rut where they feel like they've lost and they almost give up on themselves and they hit like ground zero and they don't know where to go, right? And they just kind of shut everything off. And I think we have a unique ability to continue to persevere, look at the situation analytically and push forward and learn from our mistakes, right? And I think fundamentally that comes down to the fact that we don't really have an off switch, right?
Yeah.
And so where do you think, I guess to start from the umbrella, where do you think this lack of an off switch that we have for business or racing comes from? Why do we have it?
This topic, missing an off switch, stems from a Hormozy quote, which is people often look for something that champions have that others don't, but that's not the case at all. Champions lack something that everyone else has, an off button. It's a Hormozy quote.
Great.
It's interesting because, as I said earlier, my dad used to tell me to get aggressive and get my elbows out, etc. And I did have an off switch. It was off all the time. I never turned it on. I didn't fucking care. But when I found rowing, I didn't even try it. My mom just suggested it. And I knew instinctually, I was like, that's what I'm going to go for. And there are many professional athletes who don't have an off switch, famously. Michael Jordan is another one. He's just such an elite athlete. And the Last Dance documentary is so good. They've got footage from every year of Jordan's career.
Wow.
But they used to finish practice and everyone would like go in the locker room and like, end practice, and Jordan would start shooting free throws and doing drills and doing suicides, and everyone would be like, Jordan, you gonna go home? And he was like, nope, a little more practice for me. He'd stay for like another 2 hours. He just wouldn't stop. He would not stop. And when he did stop, he went to the hotel room to go sleep and eat and then go back into the gym to work more. Like, it was nonstop. There was no off switch. Max Verstappen is another phenomenal example. I'm sure you've seen this bit from the documentary, but when it would start to rain at the track, everyone would box up their carts and they would go to the lunch hall and they would take it easy, and Max would just be doing lap after lap after lap in the rain because his dad knew that's where the difference is made in changeable conditions. That's where you get used to the least amount of traction. You need to go out and train. And Max would drive until his fingers froze, and then his dad would say, just put your hand back by the exhaust to warm it up on the straights and you can keep driving. And that lack of an off switch, at first for Max, it came from his dad pushing him, but Michael didn't have that at all. Michael was told, if you want it, you have to go get it. And I think that ultimately the off switch, or the lack thereof, everybody has an off switch. Everybody can turn it off.
Yeah.
But I think that athletes, or at least elite level personnel, don't choose to turn it off. I think they can look at the switch and go, nah, not yet. I can resist turning it off. I'm going to do more suicides. I'm going to do more free throws. I'm going to try a little bit more.
I could give you 100 examples of when I was racing and I didn't turn the off switch, but when my competitors did. Me staying up until 4 or 5 in the morning on the sim, and then my Baba walking into my room getting ready for work, and I was still sim racing, and she yelled at me for half an hour because I was going to kill my eyes and blah, 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 right? I could give 100 examples like that. But one that sticks out is actually an experience I had today. So I recently started therapy, right? And my therapist asked me, essentially like, how do you gauge when to stop pursuing like your goals for the year, like stop doing your laptop work for the day and like, unwind to go to bed and stuff. And I was like, I stop when I feel like I cannot complete any more effectively and productively. Like I stop when it's drained, when my battery is drained. And like I could see on her face, like every single like healthy psychological box was unchecked. It was like, I could see it in her eyes. She was like, oh man, this kid's fucked. And I was like, I just work until the battery is drained, and then I have to go to bed because I'm no longer productive, and then I rinse and repeat the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that lack of an off switch is why we have such a hard time going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
Is because it's like, but I could just do this one thing here. And it's like, I know it's 2 a.m, but like this one thing will take me 15 minutes and it will be like good. And then you like get wrapped into something else with that. And you're like, but fuck, like I really want to do this right now. It's so hard to shut it off.
I told myself Saturday night. So the next day is a big day. It's birthday day and I had a lot to do.
Mm-hmm.
I had to get up early, but it was the night before. And I told myself, I was like, bed at midnight. That's my rule. But Grace went to bed at 11. So there's no one to hold me accountable. And now I have my box of medals out, and I'm using my medals to validate which numbers I have correct and which ones I don't in my spreadsheet. And I've got them all laid out in a row, and it doesn't do it justice when it's in the box like that, like on the rail. So I'll show you the photo now, but This photo is time stamped at 12:31. That's all of them laid out one next to the other. And I had that laid out and I was like, who the fuck am I now?
Yeah.
What the fuck happened to me? Dude, we call it clinkage in rowing. That is clankage. That's so much fucking metal. Yeah. And I was like, who the fuck am I now? So now I'm amped up. It's 12:31. It's 30 minutes past my bedtime. And now I'm about to go on my laptop and start digging through more racing records. I started to go through my team's Facebook. I scrolled back 4 years to get to my senior year, accidentally opened an event, which then ruined all my scrolling, went back and scrolled through another 4 years to get back again, just to see if I can have one boat photo from one race where I think I got first, but maybe I got second. I can't remember because I don't have the shirts anymore. Like that, all of that is hitting 30 minutes past when I should be going to sleep. How the fuck am I supposed to go to sleep like that? And that's why I have to take Melatonin.
And it's funny because I feel that right now. Like, I feel that energy to, like, do this podcast and go work and crank this shit out. And I dead ass maybe got 2.5 hours of solid sleep last night.
Yeah.
Like, I woke up somewhere between 4 and 6:45, or like 3:30 and 6:45 when my alarm woke up. And I stayed awake for like 15 minutes because I was so uncomfortable and sweaty and hot sleeping in the car. And it's like, I did not get enough sleep.
Yeah.
Right. But it's like, I have had a significant amount of caffeine today. That's fair. Right. But the energy level that I feel right now talking about these visions and these dreams and the passion and the championship vibes and the winning is like just pushing me forward more than even if I got 9 hours of sleep last night and didn't go through this like mindset exercise for the podcast.
Yeah. I fully agree.
And so, I think that we have this beautiful gift, right? Mm-hmm. But it also can be a hindrance, right? Because it disrupts every other aspect of your life, right? And so I think another question that, we were going to tackle in regards to this was, can you even train or acquire the lack of an off switch, right? I think you touched on it a little bit, like everyone has an off switch, but, champions just choose not to hit it, right? But it's like, if you are someone who has an off switch, is that like a death sentence in terms of like your capacity to win and succeed? Or like, can you train that out of yourself and really go after your goals, like regardless of what is going on around you or rational reason or thought? What do you think?
At first I thought the answer was no, but then I remembered an instance in which the answer was yes. And this is a very special person, but do you know how Mike Tyson's early training was developed?
I know he worked with the older white guy, but I don't really remember. I watched the story once, but
Mike Tyson had a very rough upbringing. He had a lot of anger. He had a lot of spite. And when he found boxing, it was a way to vent that anger out. And his coach recognized the strength that he had and was like, all I've got to do is give this kid direction, right? And one problem that many aggressive people have is they're aggressive until they get hit real hard and then they're less aggressive. And his coach recognized, oh, I need to train that out of him. He needs to be aggressive always. And so this old guy would hypnotize Mike Tyson every single night, like watch in front of him. And he would hypnotize Mike into saying, you're an animal. You're a killer. You'll kill when I tell you to. And when you get in the ring, all you're going to look at is the other man in the ring until you kill him. Like, he actually trained him to be a killer. And dude, I'm sure you've seen this footage. There's one take, the camera is staring at Mike and this other dude, and the dude's like bouncing around and stuff, and you can see the back of that guy's head, and all you see is Mike Tyson just watching him. And when he's watching him, the dude's bouncing around left to right, and Mike Tyson's eyes are going left and right and left and right, and you're like, oh shit, that's how he watches the watch when he's being hypnotized. Oh, wow. He's locking in right now, and that bite, he fucking murders him. Like, he goes insane. It's like an immediate knockout. He kills him immediately. So aggressive.
When Mike Tyson started training again,
oh my God,
he had, this was a little while ago when he first started,
years,
he had an interview with Joe Rogan.
Mm-hmm.
And Joe Rogan, after that podcast, said he was so terrified by the look in Mike Tyson's eyes. And it was a good podcast. It was like they had good questions. They had a nice conversation. But Joe Rogan was so terrified by the look in his eyes, he actually made the table longer to separate himself farther away from the guests.
Do you know what's the most interesting part about that? He had Mike Tyson on before.
Yes.
And it wasn't an issue. But when he started training again and he came back, that's when he had the table widened.
Yes.
And that is the deep water.
Yeah.
And Mike Tyson, I mean, he's a fucking supreme example of a human. But it can be done, right? Because maybe he had an off switch before he went through his intense training. He had it turned off for years when he was retired. But champions can turn the off switch off again.
Right.
They can turn that. And like, dude, his training videos from when he was getting ready to fight Jake Paul are just devastating.
Oh, yeah.
They're so dangerous. He's such a fucking killer. Even now in his 50s, like, I think he like tweaked his back or something, so he had to back out of the Jake Paul fight. But that's probably God speaking to Jake Paul, because like that is not Mike Tyson being too old to train. That is divine intervention holding Mike Tyson back to save Jake Paul's life. Like, that's fucking terrifying, dude.
How do you think you train that, right? Like, I think we've established that. Yeah. I think we've established that it's possible to acquire.
Yeah.
Right. There is a way to do it. But like for the average listener or entrepreneur that feels like they need resting in order to like make themselves more productive, or they need this like 5-step morning routine to like get them in the mood to do laptop work and dump it up and up and up, or whatever, right? How do you effectively train to become that work animal and that dream chaser?
The rowing flow state, the dead inside, keep going flow state is really interesting. I remember when I was team captain in high school, while we were stretching every day, I would remind everybody that somewhere out there, a team, a boat, a person is having a day off, and we're working while they're taking that day off. We would do captain's practices where the coach can't make it to a practice one day, so no practice. Or if you want to go, it's a captain's practice, and the captains run everything. And when other people were captains, everybody loved captain's practices because we'd go play ultimate frisbee or football or something. We'd have fun. And when I was captain, those were the worst workouts. I would pick the worst workout from our roster, and I'd be like, that's what we're doing. And it would really weed out who was going to win that year and who wouldn't. You could tell right away who's coming to the hard practices. And interestingly, I was in the second varsity 8. So we're the second fastest boat on the team by choice, because every day in practice, the top 8 is unchallenged. They don't have anybody faster than them. So they just kind of go at their own pace. The 2V can't really keep up, right? And because you're the top dog, you get an ego and you don't really work as hard as you should. And then you go to races and you get your ass beat. And now you're the fastest guy in your team, but you lost last weekend and we got a medal in our class and they're pissed. A lot of drama in the top boat. So halfway through my senior year, my coach was like, hey, your times are quick enough now. I'm going to put you in the V8. I was like, no, don't. Like, I have a very tight bond with the guys in the 2V. Not all my guys are fast enough to get up into the V8. Don't move me. He was like, I'm going to move one of your guys. And I was like, you can move him for a few races, but I want him back for that last race, the quad. And he was like, okay. And so he took him out to the V8, and then he still let me have him for several practices. And then in the last race, it was important to me. But the reason I did that, and the reason I loved the 2V, is that the 2V were underdogs every year, no matter what. If the 2V could push the V8, you had a strong team, because then your top 16 guys are working every single day. And so I tried to keep the 2V as stacked as possible because I knew it was good for both boats. And if the V8 qualifies for nationals and the 2V qualifies for nationals, those are my boys. And ultimately, my senior year, the V8 did not qualify for nationals, which they made some fucking stupid errors, and they totally could have made it, but I think they finished 5th or maybe 4th. No, it would have been 5th because 4th doesn't qualify for nationals. They were right on the cusp. But they made some stupid fucking errors that they shouldn't have. Whatever, not my boat. I wasn't in charge of them. Upsetting, but still. We got first in that race. But every day we would go to practice, and I would remind everybody, someone else is out there taking a day off. And every time we would have a day off and they would be faced with the decision to not go to captain's practice, I would say, someone's out there working and you're not. But there are 2 mottos. Each of my teams had a motto. And those are more powerful than even those messages that I would send to my team. And each of them had it on a banner on the front of the boathouse. Florida Tech motto for varsity rowing is the relentless pursuit of greatness. And if you start every morning at 6 a.m. doing your warm-up, staring at a sign that says the relentless pursuit of greatness, that elevates my heart rate sitting here, right? If I'm about to go into a practice, relentless pursuit of greatness, I'm going hard every single practice. But the one that really hits home for me they had this on a banner on the inside of the Space Coast Crew Boathouse. And my freshman coach used to have us do stress training. We used to pride ourselves on being Florida rowers because we would often do races in Georgia and Tennessee and Virginia, like northerner states, in the summer. That's when the peak racing season is. It's like April, May, June. And we used to pride ourselves because we race on rough water down here. We got bad chop. It's all flat lakes up there. Bad chop down here. Fucking crazy heat, crazy humidity, big crowds, so lots of shouting. And we used to pride ourselves on that because if we would go up north and there was a slightly choppy day, other teams would fall apart and we would excel. And so my freshman coach used to have us do stress training, and I can remember vividly. We would sit down and we would line all of the ergs up this way, and it sucked because the way we had the ergs lined up is you weren't getting the wind from the ones behind you, so there was no air moving around in the boathouse. It's a concrete hurricane shelter with a metal roof. It gets fucking hot in there. Closed every door. Every bay door was closed. You just started cooking immediately. This is fucking, I don't know, May, April? Yeah. He would blare the speakers and we would do crazy intense sprint pieces. And you couldn't really fucking see anything on the sides of your peripheral visions. Your body just shuts that out because you're dying, you're overheating. It was like intentionally induced heat stroke inside. And he would blare crazy fucking music and like screaming and shit. And he would have the coxswains go around and like coach each one of you, like just yell in your ear. And ahead of everybody was this one banner with 2 words on it. And it just said one more. And that banner got me through so many workouts, through every single day of high school, every single day of college. It's even more impactful for me than the relentless pursuit of greatness. One more can be carried into anything. But I'm very grateful to have those 2 quotes from both of my teams. They're elite teams, but yeah, those 2. I think if you have it beaten into you every single day as you're going through hell and back, if those are the only words that you're thinking of, yeah, everything else is easy.
I think that what we've kind of come to is that you need, as someone who's trying to find a way to pursue this greatness, or, not have that off switch, or not need this special morning routine to get into a certain mood or whatever, right? You need to find a way to energize and motivate yourself to where you are passionate beyond what you thought was possible about the task you are trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. You are just envisioning the greatness that's in front of you and just pushing it one step at a time, one more little piece at a time, mm-hmm. right? And I think that, good leaders are able to take that energy and kind of push it towards, or, instill it on the people they are leading, whatever group they're a part of, right? Like, strong leaders come out and shine in that respect because they're able to carry that passion and that emotion to the rest of the people around them. Mm. What character traits do you think comprise those kinds of leaders that are able to motivate and drive the people around them to greatness?
I have 4 core traits. But before that, I want to emphasize how important it is to be a champion, not a winner, not the greatest, but a champion. You have to be a part of a team, and usually you're the leader of that team. No one makes it to the heights that these athletes and professionals have on their own. Michael Jordan could not have won 6 NBA championships on his own. Michael Schumacher could not have won 5 World Drivers' Championships without Ferrari. Jeff Bezos couldn't have scaled Amazon without an entire elite team of mercenaries. Maybe Max Verstappen could have won the 2023 World Constructors Championship on his own, but he couldn't have done it without Red Bull. But a talented individual is wasted without the ability to lead their team to success. No billionaire works alone. Even Warren Buffett has a whole team with him. So leadership is very, very integral to success in every avenue. And I feel like people all too often completely overlook it. So before we dissect it, I want to talk a little bit about how curious it is for me, because we spoke about this in the last podcast or two, where it's kind of a paradox for me, because I think you explained it better with how the paradox was. But what's my issue with leadership? It's the only
you want to be selected by the populace for that position because they see the value in it.
Yep.
In you to be in that position.
Yep.
Right. Rather than putting yourself there because you feel qualified, or going through a recommendation that then puts you there because they feel that you're qualified. Right. You need like a C behind you to push you up into that spot, and then you lead.
Yep. And I've given this a lot of thought. And I think that it's because I have a problem with authority. And that's shown through my lab record at Florida Tech with our GSAs. But I think it's because I have a problem with authority. A lot of guys, I've had many, many rowing coaches. And for some of them, I've had teammates who go, I would follow that man through hell. And I'm like, I wouldn't. That guy's not in that boat every day. That guy's not killing himself. I go through hell for you. I row with you. And I think I have identified exactly what it is. And it's brotherhood is stronger than leadership for me. And that follows the trend of a great man doesn't seek to lead, he's called to it. If you're part of a brotherhood, if you're on equal footing with everybody else, and there's all equal respect, they won't resent you for leading because they'll want you there.
Yeah.
I think that a leader who's put into a position of power is a dictator in any sense, even if they're qualified. If they're put there and not selected into it, then the people you're leading don't really want you there. And at that point, you're not leading. And I think that most of the leaders I have haven't been elected. They've been placed there. Now, several of my coaches, I would follow through hell, and I do have an enormous amount of respect for them. I hope to be working with one when I get this alumni position. But I grew up writing essay contests for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Association. And I won a lot of the essay contests, and I would have to go speak at these huge conventions of thousands of veterans. And that was very touching to me. I was never good at speaking to elderly people, but I got very good at it at a young age, meaning I got good at speaking to people in general. But every time I would go speak, I'm fucking 12 and 13 years old, and these people are telling me, like, you're going to be a senator one day. And I would thank them, and I would be polite, and I'd go home, and my mom would be like, "Do you hear that, Mr. Senator? You're going to be something special." And I hated it. I did not want to be something special. I didn't want that responsibility. And I think that's actually a good thing, because my reckoning allowed me to just focus on myself. I don't want to be responsible for other people. I don't want to lead. I don't want to be the guy everybody looks at. I just want to work on myself. And that gave me the ability to work on myself and not worry about others, which in turn prepared me to hold the responsibility of having leadership positions when that time was called. And interestingly, like, we won't get into politics about it, but I think that the best leaders have spent most of their lives not focusing on leading, but focusing on themselves, which makes them a good leader. Right. And in my senior year of high school, my team needed me. We had the coach that had been coaching there for years, like decade, a full decade, I think he coached there, left, like short-term notice. So they had to find a new coach. And all of the parents were freaking out. All of the systems were down. All of the rowers were freaking out because the rowers bond with the coach is really important. They're the guy you spend all your time with every day. And the new guy was a military man. He was pretty abrupt. He was pretty blunt, which is my language. And he was having a difficult time connecting with the team, and the team was having a difficult time connecting with him. And I recognized, if I don't do something here, this is going to fall apart. This team is going to fall apart. But I speak the language of the team, and I speak the language of the coach. Maybe I can be a translator. And so instead of broaching the topic myself, our coach said, I'm going to look for people who show leadership tendencies and put them up for promotion for captain. And so I remember I was like, okay, it's up to my team to vote for me, but I'm going to do everything that I can to show them that I think I can help. And so I spoke with everybody. I had one-on-one meetings with a lot of the seniors, and I was like, do you guys understand Coach Little? Do you know how he operates? And I remembered that to show my coach that I really meant it. I remember the first time I met him, I had like a broken arm, like it was real fucked up. I think it was the first day of preseason training, and I couldn't row. And he was like, "The fuck happened to you?" And I was like, I laid on a skateboard like Superman and had my friend tow it behind his bike, and then we hit a car. And he was like, "The fuck?" So like my first impression was not one of an elite athlete. So I healed. I started training hard. I lost weight. I stayed after practice every single day to pick up water bottles and socks and shoes and shit, which nobody did that. And I used to have a lot of one-on-one talks with my coach that way, and we bonded. And that got me elected as team captain, and I then helped the team. I was able to heal the bond between coach and the board, and everything was fine. And I even recommended captains for the next year, and the team ultimately voted them in, and things went well for many years. In my senior year of college, the same fucking thing happened. I'm voted in as team captain. The school cuts us from varsity to club status. Our coaches leave. Everything's in chaos. None of the systems are down. All the parents of these new athletes on scholarship are freaking out. What's going to happen? The coach is only on a 1-year term, the one who stayed. What's he going to do? Is he going to leave or stay? Do I have to coach? Do I have to find a coach? The fuck is going to happen? So, I was already elected team captain, so I decided to co-found with Thomas the rowing club, and then sue the school and go from there. And it's like, when people needed me, I had done enough work on myself to be confident that I could be there when people need me. And the people that I'm there for, I see myself as equal with. But I think that given the work that I've done on myself, those people who I see myself as equal with are comfortable following me. I think I feel really uncomfortable being put on a pedestal or told that I'm special, when really I would rather see myself as on a level playing field with these people, but just give my input on what direction I think we should go. That's the thought I give it to it.
That is quite the thought. It's quite the
It's
thought.
a lot.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it is a lot. It's a lot.
I have more.
I know you do. I wanted to say that I very much appreciate the mindset of being elected to a position, like pushed up to this point of leadership. And although I think there are definitely times where I like strive for like a leadership position, right? Like I want to be a leader, right? I think I still do try to some extent to always connect with the people around me to ensure that they're on board with that. Like even with Formula SAE, I was pretty much told that I was going to be like SAE president. Dude, like you're the only guy who's been here for 4 years. You're going to be president, right? But even before that, there were people on the team who had looked up to me and, sought my help on different tasks with their part of the car or whatever. Like I was ingrained in the team. It wasn't like I was a back burner guy and like I was just the last one. And so they threw me up there to try and continue it, right? Like I'd had a passionate investment and interest in continuing the team and helping it foster and grow and live another year.
Even more so than that, you were the only person to stay committed with the team. You were the only multi-year member of our team the year that we did it.
True.
But remember, the only reason I had the vice president position on that team is because you texted me and you were like, I need someone.
Yeah. You were
someone.
the only person that like I thought could fit that role.
Right. And I wouldn't have accepted if I didn't think that you were deserving of the position that you already held and were asking me for help from. So it goes both ways.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of people, I get an icky feeling when there's somebody who's in charge who wants to be there. When it's someone who's like, because I feel like they want the power not to help people. It's not a noble thing if you want to be there.
That's a great point. I don't think I ever wanted to be a leader to have the leadership label. I think I've always, anytime I've like wanted that position or worked towards that, it's been because I genuinely inside wholesomely feel that I can really help the people around me and really connect with the team and bring us together and push us to new levels, because I've seen flaws before with whatever's happened with our team or different leaderships not meshing well, and I'm like, I know I can bring these people together. I want that. Let me prove that.
I feel like there's two terrible ways to go about it. It's either you want to be a leader so badly that you actually only want the title or the position or the money and you don't really care about the people, or you want to not be a leader so badly that you get stuck as a lone wolf. Like I could do it all myself. And I very frequently see people these days idolizing lone wolves. And it's interesting because people want to succeed on their own to prove that they can do it, and they don't want to work with other people to get there. I've seen several of those people online, not many in person, but they're like, I'm going to do it myself and I don't need anyone else. And they'll never make it. You never make it on your own. And what's interesting is on the flip side, I see people who are the polar opposite, and they'll work with anybody, it seems, or they'll make half-hearted promises to anybody. And both of those are interesting to me, and I don't know how people feel that way. I don't know how people feel either like a slut to the woman in the red dress, like I'll work with absolutely anybody, or I'm only going to do it on my own and I'll never do it with other people. It's an interesting dichotomy. I definitely don't fall in either position, but I think that, and this gets to my first point with what being a strong leader is, but it's being capable of selecting the right individuals for the right tasks. So if you're willing to work with anybody, you're not really being selective. You're not building an elite team. And if you don't want to work with anybody, you just want to work by yourself, you're not building a team at all. So I think that the first of 4 attributes I have for a strong leader is being able to not only pick the right people, but pick the right role for that person. So in rowing, I can build a boat of great guys, but I need to know what seats to put those guys in to make sure that the boat is balanced.
Yeah. Hormozy actually has a good point about that. He talks about how sometimes when people are in a certain company for long enough, they get promoted to these leadership positions that they just don't work well in.
Mm-hmm.
And so he has this way of addressing that sort of situation. And he would have, if he was in that situation, if Hormozy saw that a part of his company had this leadership guy that just wasn't working well and he was only there because he got promoted from being there for 10 years or whatever, you can demote that person to a lower position or back to where they were and frame it as a, hey man, like you aren't great at this, but that's okay. I want you to become a specialist and a leader at what you're great at. You know, let's say you're a sales guy and then you get promoted to sales manager. You might not be good at managing, but you're really good at sales. And that might be why you got promoted to sales manager.
Right.
And I think it's important that there is a leader in place that can recognize what people are good at and what they're bad at and how to build the bond in the community and ensure that everyone can grow in their strengths and within their strong suits.
Right.
Right. And I think that man, I'm lost. Give me 1 second.
I can bounce off that if you want. I've got something.
Okay, I can throw it in.
Okay. I think you make a great point about finding the people who work best in that area with the people that they work with. That's my second attribute of a strong leader, is that they inspire their team to care for one another. My example here is if you've ever seen a rowing team, an effective rowing team, or more specifically, a Navy SEAL team, they are brothers for life. Similarly with the guys who I rode with, the guy who I biked with on Saturday, the guys who I went through the lawsuit with, like those are my brothers for life. And that's not just because we sat in the same fucking boat every day. There are plenty of people who I sat in the boat with every day who I do not feel that way about. But we had such strong leadership or such a tight bond that we would actually take bullets for one another, similar to Navy SEALs. And I think that is a direct output of strong leadership. And that's important to have as a leader, is the ability to build those bonds and have your team care for one another. Because if you have a manager who doesn't promote that, who seems to not care, your team is going to not care. And if I'm working and the guy next to me doesn't care, then why the fuck am I going to care? He's not pulling hard, so why the fuck am I going to pull hard? But if I see that guy working his ass off every single stroke, I'm going to do the same. And then we build a bond.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you think that there are certain people that are better at building that bond with others? Or do you think it's like a characteristic that you can train and acquire through, hard life, experiences or whatever you go through?
Sometimes I think it's natural. Sometimes I think it just works with the correct people. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think that somebody can do it with a certain set of people, but not another. A great example, I was able to do it repeatedly with rowing, but I was not able to do it with our SAE team, largely because we weren't able to pick the people. So we were given people who were there because it was a grade and not because they wanted to be there.
Yeah.
I can't work with that very well. It's a very challenging situation because they don't want to put in effort. So what am I supposed to do with you? The best I can do is give you the easiest tasks, and they would still fuck that up. So that's a tricky situation to be in. There's not a catch-all, but I think that there are people who are more adept at that skill than others, and it's a tricky skill to have.
I like that you brought up that example because it made me backtrack a little bit and think about something that you said a little bit earlier about like being a lone wolf and how you don't really connect with that. I feel like there is a part of me that does connect with like that lone wolf underdog mentality and that style, right? But I'm not entirely sure where it comes from. But I think part of it comes from having experiences with people that I was forced to work with, and they were more of a hindrance than a help. And so I just got stuck working with, forming SAE team members that didn't give a shit and just wanted to grade. And, there's that part of me that's like, I could just do it myself and I can get through this and make it happen. But ultimately, it's been really enjoyable doing the business stuff with someone else who's equally passionate and equally driven.
Right.
Because you can share the load and chase this dream and this goal together. And it's like you're working with each other, and it's like you have like a mirror image of your work ethic and the effort you're putting in, but on different tasks. And then you can combine together and, make this thing happen. And I think that like, that's like working with you on the business stuff is one of the few times I've felt like a real connected leadership bond that is working towards something as a team. Even though we're just two people, it is a team,
right?
In that sense.
Well, think about it this way. Firstly, I'll say it's so funny that you bring that up, because under here I have written for the lone wolves quotes like they're from their perspective. I can do it better than them. I've heard you say that before. I don't need to rely on anybody else. I haven't heard you say that before, but same flavor.
Yeah.
I'm an alpha. I had that actually
Really?
written down, which is what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, it's so funny. But if you maybe that is a skill that I have, because if you think about it, I only have one friend at a time. I was best friends with Sebastian through.
I'm expiring in like 6 months.
Probably. Yeah, I'm like Leonardo DiCaprio. When you turn 25, you're out. But I was best friends with Sebastian until he moved away. And then I was best friends with Dutchie until I went to college. And then I was best friends with Shaw. I only have one friend at a time. But when I stopped talking to Shaw, that was in September. And then I didn't have a friend until February, maybe, when you and I started to hang out.
Yeah,
it was even after that.
It was like,
yeah,
we probably only started bonding next September.
Yeah, it was probably a year that I just didn't have anybody. I mean, I guess I had my girlfriend, but like I didn't have a friend. I didn't have a best friend.
Right.
So I was highly selective about my best friend. And when I picked my best friend, we do a lot of bonding things together. We do a lot of bonding exercises. We take pauses from real work to do things that we enjoy, like a podcast, which is essentially a therapy session between us,
pretty much
5 other people. But it's like that, like we're selective, and then we choose to develop that friendship in a specific way that tightens that bond. So I think that's a skill that we're developing in real time that eventually will translate, hopefully, to whatever team we build. Because not only are we going to be hiring employees, but also as we move through business, we'll need a trusted accountant and a lawyer and a business advisor and a financial planner, like whatever. We're going to need a team. And I think that if we're as selective as we are with our friends, as we are with our team, we can build a fucking elite team to build an empire.
Yeah. We can do anything we put our minds to by winning at all costs, learning from our losses, pursuing our dreams relentlessly without that off switch, and leading each other towards success with the team that we build.
And that concludes our main body portion on what it takes to become a champion. So we end every episode with a segment that I like to call dialing in. We have wide-ranging discussions on the podcast, but I like to pick one quote, and that's what we think about for the following week, just to set yourselves back in a working mood, because we're about to go work after this. And so this one has a little bit of a story behind it. From the start of my junior year in high school, I was back in the second varsity 8, the boat that I wanted to be in, and I was having fun, and we were winning a lot, and so I started fucking around. This was my most successful season, actually. And I started fucking around, and by the end of the year, I had dropped down to the 4th fastest 8, because I was just fucking hamming around, having fun. I was friends with the guys in the 4th fastest 8, so even though we weren't focusing on winning, we were having a blast, just joking around and fucking around every practice. Wasn't taking it seriously at all. And I remember I got to States, and that boat, I was in the 4th fastest 8, and we finished like 5th. And I was like, we crossed the line, and the guy behind me was like, oh, that wasn't that hard. And I was like, what you're still fucking breathing? Like, you didn't try during that race at all? And that pissed me off so much. I thought about that every single day over the summer because I was like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not going to fuck around. I'm going into my senior year. This might be my last year rowing ever if I don't get into a college to row. I don't know what the future holds for me, but I love this team. And I love the second varsity 8 that I fell out of by states. So I want to work back to the second varsity 8, and I will want to remember all of it. And I remember over the summer, I wrote down these 3 goals for myself, which was 3 goals. Do not miss a single day. Do not take a single stroke off. And remember every single one of each. And I did. Every single stroke for that entire year, I gave 100% effort. That's where I really honed my skill for learning exactly how much energy I had left in the tank and how to give exactly 100% every race. That was the year that I built an elite team, a truly won boat, and then medaled at the regional championship that I had medaled at in my freshman year. Very poetic. But I remember that I was in the 2V quad with the 3 guys who I was training with all year to become like a single boat, the guys I did the golden hour with. And I remember we were training one day before going to regionals, and one of the guys caught a crab, which is where your blade gets stuck in the water and it folds back like this. And normally it takes a long time for you to figure it out because you have to reach out and roll the handle and then lift it out of the water over your head and back down again. It takes a minute.
Yeah.
And it really slows the boat down. But we were so in tune with one another that when the guy caught the crab, we all felt it. None of us moved. We froze. He fixed it all immediately. It was like that fast of a fix. Normally it's like 5 or 10 seconds. He had it done in like under 2. And without pause, he kept going and we immediately went with him. It was just beautiful. Wow. But that's how dialed in we were together as a team, as a boat. And I remember that it was early that Sunday morning, and the team, we hadn't seen the team. We hadn't seen our parents. It was just us and the coach when we launched. And when we got on the water, it was misty because it was still early. And as we were lining up, we went way far out. This is in the mountains of Tennessee. And they've got buoys marking the edge. And we were like, fuck those buoys. We're going to keep going because we wanted extra warm-up time. So we went like way out. And I remember they were calling us to come back with the megaphone. And I was like, just take 10 more. Like just 10 more out here. And I remember thinking when we stopped before we turned around, we had a moment where we all had to pee. And so we all pissed into a sponge and then wrung it out into the river. We called it piss sponge.
Oh my God.
That was such a fun moment amongst brothers before lining up for the last race we would have together. And I remember I had a fun moment and then a serious moment lining up and then just pure love down the entire racetrack. After the 20th stroke, I was like, we're not winning this race. I'm just going to enjoy every single stroke. And I did. And I remember every single stroke of that race. And even though it hurt every stroke, the real dial in quote is one more.
Yeah.
And eventually I didn't have one with those guys. So that's it.
Thank you for listening and tuning in. And hope you enjoyed the podcast as much as we did.